Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a Sunday morning edition of Murder Church. Get the hell in here. Thanks everyone so much for coming in. Please give this the old share. I did a poor job of it this morning. If you wouldn't mind to do that on the old X machine and wherever you maybe have a social media account, that would be great. We're going to get in here. Episode 60 of the Phil Spector murder trial. And we have an hour and 30 starting us off here. With consultant and forensic scientist Stuart James. So, yeah, buckle in and let's rock.
Let's rock.
Boom, let's rock. Al Bundy style. What's up, everybody? Get in here. Publicly Buzzed Live Murder Church is a happening. Let me turn this off and do this guy right here. We'll put her on the background, a Murder Church background. By God, I'll tell you right now. I'll give it one of these guys. Wait, it's the wrong way. Boom. Hell yeah. Everybody, thanks so much for being in here. I really appreciate it. If you guys could share that out, I would also appreciate it. A lot of fine folks coming through here this morning, I can see. We got anybody that did not see. We got hit pretty hard with a lot of rain. Luckily, I'm about to actually go back down there and just do a double check from last night, but it looks like that it didn't get into my basement, knock on wood. But Dan was not so lucky. He has his basement gets it really bad, and I think he even had a pump in there pumping it out, and it could not keep up. But just so you guys can actually see, I posted a video here. This is not too far from us, honestly. Pretty bad in our area. All I've seen was horrible updates locally and just kind of around the vicinity from different counties. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. We just can't get away from this horrible weather. It seems like these rains and floods and we can't get away from it, especially ever since Helene. It feels like it's just been bad weather, bad storm after bad storm. But holy shit, it's craziness. Everybody get in here. Who's in here right now? There we go. Jersey Jane coming through. We had some wicked storm this AM. Winds were due. Yeah, the winds have been crazy. I think they're even still calling for more rain today. It sucks. But yeah, I had a thing yesterday. I was just going down every hour to, see what was happening, see if I had to, what much I could do. I didn't get to do too much preparation this time. They did say that this was a possibility. Last time this happened, I went and bought a bunch of sand. I went and bought some tarps, which I still do have the tarps, and I kind of made like an area outside of my garage, and I have a door, right next to that the water got into last time, and it worked. I don't know if it worked so much that it just didn't get up to test it, luckily. But this time I was just kept going and looking. I had the tarps behind this time, the doors in the garage, but no, it is not fun, not cool. Hate some freaking flooding, man. Bonnie Bailey getting here. Bonnie, I'm trying to get your shirts together today. And then I'm going to figure out what I need to do. There's got to be like a FedEx drop-off spot around here, but yeah, I need to figure out exactly what I need to do. Because when you do it USPS style, you have to fill it out a certain way if it's going across, into another country. I need to see how that works with FedEx. But Bonnie Bailey, I'm working on you to see if we can get it to you another way. Get those shirts to you another way. Good morning, Greeny coming through here. Drew Gambino. Anybody that didn't hang out with us on Valentine's Day on Feral Friday, you missed out on a very strange movie. A very weird movie called My Demon Lover. We had a great time watching it. A lot of fun making fun of it. It was very strange. It was goofy as hell. It was crazy. I'd never seen this one. CH coming through here was watching the weather last night, and it was going to be crazy cold in a few days. Yeah, and Cassie's aunt, she just got word that they live probably 2 hours, but even deeper into the fucking mountains. And they got fucked up where it got into their, into the house, and their heat's not working currently, which is horrible considering it's, in the fucking 30s. So Pammy coming through here also. Pokemon in the house. Sheila Duffy coming through here. Love to see it. BGOG. Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo's awesome, man. Hopefully you guys are following Joe and Salty Sleuth, but man, Joe rules. I really dig Joe. Joe's got a good a good voice for this, and Hell yeah, dude! Congrats on your interview that you had last week, and yeah, let's get something together, man. We're gonna do. I'm gonna reach out to see if he wants to do something. But Joe's cool, man. I like Joe. I think he'd be good on here to watch a movie on Feral Friday. Also, what do you think? He was, what did he say? One Crazy Summer he was mentioning, and I'd never seen that one from the '80s. So yeah, Joe, you're good, man. I watched you a little bit yesterday morning, and you both are good. A good team, actually. You and Salty. Pokemon Shelly going to do a little bit of modding this morning. I'd love to see it. And anybody that didn't see a new video, I dropped a new video, which was from the live that I did with Julia Cowley last week on Ellen Greenberg. She mentioned it originally on her podcast. Literally, as I'm watching it, I found it in some notes, but she has the actual police reports that spot out the interview with a neighbor that does give the testimony that he saw the latch actually locked, where a lot of people want to say Sam Goldberg is completely staged, which I'm just here to say that that is a very interesting portion that a lot of people don't even know about, or because anytime it's been mentioned, I've seen multiple folks kind of come at us like I don't know, but yeah. And that's all Julia, man. She was awesome, and she was really cool on here live last week. Yeah, go check out. It's in the video section. It's only 6 minutes long. I pulled out that portion of the live, but the entire live is awesome as well. It's still in the live section. Jersey Jen coming through here. I think I shouted out Jersey Jen. Sheila Duffy from Ireland coming through here this morning. Tina's in here. We got a bunch of beautiful people. Love to see it. Love to see it. Still scrolling up here. Still scrolling up. Debbie Blair, thank you so much. Now let me go back down. Now let me see what everyone's been saying as I've been talking to them. Bonnie, we got a ton of snow in the past few days. Roads are busy. Yeah. The temperature's just above where it's going to be like snowing and freezing here. Like it's just rain. Yesterday it was like 40 all day. So I'd almost rather have the freaking snow, man, than the water that we're getting right now. And the snow that we just got on top of that is melting, and that's not helping anything either. Whoa, Jay Money coming through here. Long time no see. Get in here, bud. Been missed. Carrie, Threads and Roses. Oh, Threads and Roses. I always love to see Threads and Roses. That's one of the OGs coming through here. That's awesome. That's awesome. Hell yeah, Joe. It'd be cool, man. Young Black Economist coming through here. Nice to see it. SK Barnett, if I'm saying that correctly, coming in here this morning. A bunch of new folks and old folks. Let's just say that. Love it, love it, love it. All right, yeah, we're going to jump in here again this morning. We're going to start off with an hour. We are doing the wheel, of course. We anybody that's new here that may not have seen it, we got some keychains up in this bad boy that we got on the wheel. We got some magnets, some Murder Church magnets on this bad boy that we're giving away, and of course the Holy Trinity of stickers. On Friday night, we had a lot of lovely people come through and get us halfway through a wheel, so I think we're 6 away from doing that this morning. If we can get there, we shall see. Let me just do a double take. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, we're at 5, so we're 7 away. We're almost halfway to a wheel. So, all right, guys. Yeah, like I said, we're going to get in here opening up today with Phil Spector, the murder trial. We have been on 60 episodes, believe it or not. And we're still just over the halfway point. Consultant and forensic scientist Stuart James takes the stand, and I need to get his name so I can fix it on the old screen. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get on over here. And thanks everyone so much. Appreciate it. And of course, supers, membering up, get you on the wheel, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. I'll be keeping an eye on all that. Got the lovely folks in here. I need to make this a little bigger. Actually, let me get the full screen going so I know what I'm working with. Boom. Cut some of this off. Don't need the black bars on the side. We'll bring this guy over here. Boom, 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 boom. Hell yeah, that looks pretty good if you ask me. Kind of the way I like it to look there. Then we'll get the sound on here as well as I talk to myself to get myself through it. And then I'm going to get his name changed.
The people have another witness to go yet, but I understand he's not present, so the defense is...
Give it the old share skin. Oh, before we even go too far, Bonnie Bailey going to come through here, passing the plate. Did that pop up there? Yes, Bonnie Bailey. Passing the plate down the row. Thank you, Bonnie, so much. Appreciate that. Bonnie Bailey, an absolute G. And let's see if these are working. I just got to make sure. I'm going to give you one of these. Anyway, let's get physical. Yeah, Bonnie. Thank you so much, Bonnie Bailey. Making that an official halfway point here with a $5 holler. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
It's going to continue. All right.
Stuart James, please.
Oh, shit the bells. Dear God, BGOG. Saving the day. Coming through here. Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, we only start with everybody all gather at be attack. They're going to run it up. They're ringing the bells. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. There we go. Salty Sleuth coming through. I was just putting you over, Salty. You and Joe make a good team. I was hanging out with you guys yesterday morning. Good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be doing some more stuff, I'm sure, man. You guys are really good at what you're doing, actually. Like reading the shit and like getting as deep as y'all are is really entertaining and fun to watch. So, and it's a huge space, man. Like there's so much going on at all freaking times. So, all right, let's keep rolling here.
Please spell your first and last name.
Yes, my name is Stuart James. My first name is spelled Stuart, and my last name James.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. James.
Good morning.
You've been in this courtroom before. Could you tell the jurors, please, a little bit about your profession today? What you do?
Yes, at the present time, I am a consulting forensic scientist. I have a specialty in bloodstain pattern analysis.
I'm sorry, what is bloodstain pattern analysis? Let me just interrupt you.
Bloodstain pattern analysis is a...
Dude, it's a hard space to even get into, like, when you're first really... I know you've been around for a minute, Salty, also, but, like, there's a different level to, like doing it on, like... I don't know, man. Even doing it is like, I don't even do it as regularly as someone should. Like, you really need to be doing it daily to be, like... and doing the hottest possible cases, right? Like, you guys are, and the thing about that is that always bothers me is the people that do all of that, but then they like still try to manipulate what's actually happening. No, dude, you're actually just giving the facts and your opinion on top of that. Like, you know, I'm probably pretty annoying on here sometimes when I talk about some of these things, and I don't know. And people you do whatever they want, you know. There's people in the space that I like and that I don't like, that I'm not going to get into any kind of crazy stuff because the feuds are stupid, but nah, man, I really like what you guys are doing, dude. It's cool to see. More people like you guys would make this space a hell of a lot more tolerable. Let me just say that. J Money, I think, shit, I don't even know. Hold on, I'll get it for you.
Study of the size, shape, distribution.
Oh, it's right above there, yeah. And if you see above here, it's a little hard to see, but boom, right there, the money sign, publicly buzz. If you type that on there, it should pop up in the old Cash App.
And most importantly, location of various types of bloodstains that are distributed during bloodshed events.
Okay, and I'd like to go with the jury a little bit about your background that got you here today to be a person who does bloodstain pattern analysis for a living. Could you give the jurors a little bit of your educational background and qualifications, please?
Yes, I received a BA degree in chemistry and biology from Hobart College, a small college in upstate New York, in 1962. In 1963, I completed a 12-month internship in medical technology, and I actually practiced clinical laboratory work for several years after I completed that.
So when I made that post, I went ahead and made the post, but for 2 seconds I was like, oh, people are going to... I don't think anybody's actually going to look that deep into it, but... because it's really just a funny cartoon with Stewie saying, all right, I guess this is the night bitches die. I could see that being a little bit insensitive towards Lotta Clarkson, but I also thought it was kind of funny, and so I went ahead and gave it the old post.
I've completed 9 hours of graduate study in forensic science. This was completed at Elmira College in Elmira, New York. That was my first course in bloodstain pattern analysis, which was actually for graduate credit.
S-P-A-T-T?
Also, I completed a course
I'm actually Googling
in
that.
forensic microscopy, as well as homicide investigation. These courses were all taught by Herbert Leon McDonnell, who is still a practicing bloodstain analyst.
And is he commonly called the father of...
Well, let's see if this is accurate or close. Spatter, S-P-A-T-T-E-R, usually refers to the smaller droplets or particles, often describes a light scattering of particles such as from rain or cooking. Again, if we're thinking blood, right, implies a gentler or more controlled distribution. Splatter, and this may be different because I don't know if it will change in medical terms, typically refers to a larger, more chaotic spread of liquid, often results in a mess. Blood on there if it changes anything. When referring to blood, the correct term is spatter. Here we go. Meaning the dispersion of blood droplets due to force or impact, while splatter is considered less precise and often implies a more chaotic. It's still kind of the same, but yeah, usually in a situation where they're looking at blood that after a crime like this, I'd imagine it's more like a spatter than a splatter.
Bloodstain pattern analysis?
Well, I'm not sure what that makes me, but Herbert has been doing bloodstain pattern analysis since 1971 when he wrote a treatise on the subject.
Okay. And your first course was a course that you actually took from him?
Yes, that was in 1977.
And is that called a basic bloodstain pattern course?
Yes, that's a 40-hour, what is termed a basic course in bloodstain pattern interpretation or analysis, correct?
Good. And can you tell the jurors a little bit about your employment history, if you would?
Yes, as I've already stated, I was a practicing medical...
Oh, shit. J Money going to come through here with the Cash App. That worked. I'm glad to see that worked. $3 holla. And he says, you know what he says? Give me the loot. Give me the loot. He says, I'd like to get one of those keychains, maybe a magnet, maybe some stickers. J Money, a former winner also. He won a t-shirt in the early days. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, J Money.
Technologist for several years.
And what is that? Let me just stop. What is that?
A clinical laboratory analyst. I perform tests on blood chemistries, blood grouping for transfusions, microbiology, a little histology, and urinalysis, and all the types of tests that one would go either to a hospital or to their personal physician to have samples taken and those tests performed.
And do you have any experience in assisting law enforcement at all?
I'm sorry?
Experience in assisting law enforcement at all in your employment history?
Yes, well, after I completed my medical technology work, I was actually working in a hospital in Binghamton, New York, set up a toxicology laboratory, forensic toxicology, and I ran that under the direction of a Dr. Rudolph Muehling at that time. And we did drug analyses for various police agencies in upstate New York. This laboratory developed through further education of my own from 1977 to 79, the forensic courses that I described.
Shelley, thank you.
And ultimately, nice. I was involved in setting up the first crime laboratory in the Binghamton, New York area. And that laboratory was funded by the Law Enforcement Administration assistance, as well as money supplied by Binghamton General Hospital, where the laboratory was set up. And I supervised that laboratory for approximately 4 years. And we did forensic analysis and crime scene work for approximately 13 counties in upstate New York.
Okay. And in addition to your initial training with Herb McDonald on bloodstain pattern analysis, had you taken other courses in the area of bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I have.
Did you take one in 1983?
Yes, in 1983, Herbert Leon McDonnell, at the request of many of his former students, he set up the first advanced course in bloodstain pattern analysis. And I was a member of that class. There were, I believe, 22 of us. And the reason I mention that is that advanced course was the beginning of our International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts. And I, being at the first course, was given the title of charter member. And that group now is international with approximately 900 members. And we hold annual conferences every year.
And does it publish a journal or a news report or a reporting system on cases? Newsletter of sorts?
Yes. Among our other educational opportunities, we have what is called the IABPA News. That's the initials for International Association.
This one is a consultant and forensic scientist, Greenie.
Of bloodstain pattern analyst, and I have been the editor of that publication. It's a quarterly publication for about the past 3 or 4 years, and I'm still the editor of that publication.
Okay. Prior to taking the 40-hour course with Mr. McDonald in 1983, had you had other courses in death investigation, forensic science, arson, and forensic chemistry dealing with law enforcement?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And did you take some of those at the United States Department of Justice?
Yes, that's one I've taken, and these courses are really anywhere from 1 day to 3 or 4 or 5 days, and I have taken probably 400 to 500 hours of continuing education over the years, and some of the locations have been the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Henry Lee Institute in West Haven, Connecticut, as well as the continuing educational conferences that are sponsored by the IABPA, and also attending numerous meetings of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, of which I'm a fellow member.
And in addition to the 400 or 500 hours of continuing education you've taken since 1983, do you actually have formal teaching experience to teach bloodstain pattern analysis to people?
Yes.
Okay. And could you give the jurors a little bit of the benefit of your teaching experience beginning from the year 1972?
Well, in the 1970s, I was teaching first a toxicology course, which ultimately led into another forensic science course at the State University of New York at Binghamton, which is in Binghamton, New York. Well, actually, it's in Vestal, New York. But, sorry?
I didn't hear the city.
Binghamton?
Well, actually, it's in.
Vestal, V-E-S-T-A-L. That led into this forensic science course. This was in the School of General Studies and primarily evening courses that I taught there. I also taught death investigation, forensic science at a local community college called Broome Community College, which is also in Binghamton, New York. And subsequent to that, I've had teaching appointments at several police academies, including Broome County, New York, and getting more now into my teaching in bloodstain pattern analysis. I have taught at the Tampa Police Academy. This goes back to about 1988, 89. I have taught in Michigan at the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and these are 5-day courses. And I've taught many basic courses and many advanced courses, and more recently with a Paul Kish from upstate New York. He and I have taught together now for the last several years, both within the U.S. and abroad, teaching basic and advanced courses in bloodstain analysis. We have taught in... or
at all for us, thank God.
Let's see, overseas we've taught in London to the Metropolitan Police, basic and advanced courses. We have taught the same to
how was that?
the Police Academy in Holland.
They did do that on Film Friday.
We have taught at the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto, and I have taught with Pat Laternus, who's with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Ottawa Police College, an advanced course in Perth, Australia, a year ago. So I've had, a lot of teaching experience, mainly with Paul Kish, but also with some others.
Okay. And before I ask you the next question, Mr. James, could you just pull the mic a little closer to you?
I'm sorry. Is that better?
No problem. Thank you very much. About how many hours would you estimate that you have taught over the past 20 years?
How many hours I've taught? I never really counted it, but I've probably done 15 or more 40-hour courses.
Okay. And some of those have been, in addition to the police departments, have you taught police departments in the United States?
Yes. I have assisted with teaching or taught courses in Elmira, New York with Herb McDonald. He's invited me as a lecturer at some of his courses. I taught with Herb at the Tampa Police Academy. Paul and I have taught in Appleton, Wisconsin, a basic course. And really most recently, Paul Kish and I taught an advanced course in bloodstain pattern analysis in San Diego just this past December.
And the membership in professional organizations, I believe you mentioned them in passing. They are what, sir?
I'm a fellow in the American Academy of Forensic Sciences and also a charter and also a distinguished member of the International Association of Bloodstain Pattern Analysts.
And have you been certified as a bloodstain pattern analysis by anyone?
Well, yeah, Herbert McDonald has taken upon himself to certify several individuals, including myself, based upon his familiarity with our casework and testimony over the years. And Paul Kish and I both are certified by Herbert as competent. And it's just something that I thought that Herb wanted to do, and I take it for what it is. It's not to be construed as a national certification.
Okay. And have you ever given any formal scientific presentations in bloodstain pattern analysis?
Yes, I usually, on the average, I'm asked to present, information on various subjects, mainly bloodstain pattern analysis over the past 10 or 12 years, to various, law enforcement groups, also legal groups involving attorneys' conferences and things like that. And I probably do 2 or 3 a year of those.
Okay. And exclusive of books for the moment, have you authored any scientific publications in any journals?
Yes.
On bloodstain pattern analysis, I apologize.
On bloodstain pattern analysis papers, probably the only one that comes to mind in terms of scientific papers was in the American Journal of Clinical Pathology, was with Dr. William Eckert.
Interesting.
And the
Very pro-Phil. Huh. That's interesting.
Dealt with...
Sheila had watched the movie with Pacino where he plays Phil Spector, and I was interested to see how they handled the movie.
A situation where a husband had tried to dispose of his wife he worked in a funeral home and tried to use the crematorium as a disposal method, and there were bloodstains left over. So my portion of that paper was to write about the bloodstains.
Table over.
And
We just
before we
started
get
hanging
into your books, Your Honor,
Oh,
I'd like
yeah.
to have Mr. James's CV marked if I could, rather than going into all the other areas.
All right, that would be
Got a bunch of new merch in there,
G9.
money.
Thank you, Your
Yeah,
Honor.
now the shirt's not on the table in this one. It's just the stickers, the magnet, and the keychain. But every once in a while, I'll still throw a shirt on there. That's why you got to come every time. You never know when a shirt may come up.
And, sir, after we marked your credentials, which are more fully set forth in your
we gotta watch it. We
curriculum
gotta check it out.
vitae, have you also authored any books on bloodstain pattern
Pull it up here,
analysis?
just so I can get it.
Well, I think the correct terminology, in all due credit, is that I've been a co-author in several books, and also have been an editor of 2. Being an editor of a book means that you contribute to the book, but you also have contributing authors on various subjects.
Okay, the movie, a drama centered on the relationship between Phil Spector and defense attorney Linda Kinney Bodden while the musician legend was on trial. So, interesting. It's heavily about Bodden and Spector. Holy shit. Interesting angle, really. And how wild to be Linda Kinney Bodden and I'd imagine, having to be even on set, right? And like she was probably the correspondent to get the details more correct or right. I guess that makes sense if they're going that angle. Yeah, we'll have to watch this on Feral Friday sometime, just to see how it works.
And could you tell the jurors the books that you have edited, please?
Well, the books that I've edited, let's see, Forensic Science book that is used by approximately...
Yeah, and once upon when I first debuted the magnets, I think I said maggot, and these are maggots. You can get maggots. Oh, would that look good on a fridge? 100
colleges as a so-called introductory text to forensic sciences, although many students feel it's a little more advanced than that. I didn't watch the new stuff. That is co-edited, actually, with John Norby, who is a forensic scientist from Tacoma, Washington. And
that's
there was another book that I co-edited on legal aspects of bloodstain evidence, and that was back, I believe, around 1988.
Right. And have you co-authored books?
Yes.
And what are the names of those books, sir?
Interpretation of bloodstain evidence at crime scenes first appeared in 1988, I believe. That was co-authored with Dr. William Eckert. And the second edition of that book appeared a few years later. I think it was 1998, and that also was co-authored with Dr. William Eckert.
This guy plays Alan Jackson in the movie. Hold on. Wait. This guy, David Aaron Baker, plays Alan Jackson. How cool to have been depicted in film. And you got Jeffrey Tambor plays Bruce Cutler, who really we didn't get to see do an insane amount of stuff, but oh man, Shelly's showing off her stickers on her car. This just came through my feed. It literally popped up right next to me. Look at that. That fucking rules. Dude, those stickers pop too, right? They're nice. Super nice. Hell yeah. Shelly out here, man, representing in the streets. Love to see that.
With other contributors, and more recently, I believe it was in 2005, we decided to get together Paul Kish and Paulette Sutton. Paulette Sutton, by the way, is another bloodstain analyst, and the three of us co-authored the newest book, which is Principles of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, Theory and Practice.
Yeah, maybe we'll watch it this Friday. Maybe that's what
I also want to give credit to several contributing authors in that book who wrote chapters, for the publication.
Okay. And we've been holding up this book. This is a copy of it?
Yes, that is a copy of the latest book. That is not the third edition of the first two. It's a brand new book.
Okay. And when you co-authored or when you authored this book called Principles of Bloodstain Pattern Analysis, Theory and Practice, did you discuss blood spatter in gunshot wounds?
Spatter produced by gunshot wounds, yes.
Okay. In that book, sir, did you ever discuss how far blood spatter could go backwards in an intraoral gunshot wound?
No. Intraoral gunshot wounds are not that prevalent, and most texts, in fact, all the texts that I know of, and I'm pretty sure I know 95% of them, do not specifically talk about blood or back spatter, gunshot spatter associated with intraoral gunshot wounds.
Why is that generally?
Well, it may be a matter of how often you see these, and back spatter is usually presented in text and articles in different ranges depending upon the methodology by which they're gaining the data. Some people do it experimental-wise, shooting through bloody sponges. Other people use casework where they have observed it. But intraoral gunshot wounds, and specifically regarding back spatter, there's not really much information out there.
Let me just backtrack one moment, sir. The curriculum vitae that I have, that you gave me this morning, you reviewed that curriculum vitae?
Yes, I'm pretty familiar with it.
It's one that's been marked G9, and was it accurate, up to date?
Yes, it's accurate, and it's up to date as of 06/07, which would have been last month.
Okay, thank you. Now, going back to the book that you authored, do you also teach courses or advanced school courses on intraoral gunshot wounds?
I'm sorry?
You teach advanced courses, on gunshot wounds or back spatter or anything of that sort, not intraoral?
Well, the advanced courses, we try to get, first of all, a basic review of basic theory and principles of bloodstain and pattern analysis, because students taking the advanced course may have taken their basic course years before. So we try to start off with a review of basic materials, and then Paul Kish and myself, we concentrate on fairly specific issues, one being the origin determination with the use of stringing, as well as the trigonometric method, because many students don't get that in their basic courses.
Kenny Bodden out here rubbing elbows with the elites.
About it. We also concentrate on examination of bloodstained clothing, and also on the case review based on photographs and autopsy reports, which is between the clothing examinations and the photographic examinations is probably 80% of the laboratory work.
Okay.
There are some other issues depending upon students' interest in what they may want to experiment on, but that's pretty much what we do in the basic courses.
Did you teach a course in San Diego in December 2006?
I did,
And
with Paul Kish.
Did you teach that course with Paul Kish?
Correct.
Your co-author. Was Dr. Lynn Harold a student at that course?
Yes, she was.
At that course, did you ever discuss
Who they got playing,
the
Judge
back
Dowhart?
spatter of intraoral gunshot wounds?
She just got Judge Dowhart.
Okay.
I don't recall doing it. It's not a subject that we would specifically address.
Okay.
I'm sure we talked about back spatter either by case review. Because see, also, Paul and I show a lot of cases during our advanced courses, and also, which I failed to mention, one of the requirements for a student to participate in an advanced course is that they themselves have to bring a case for presentation to the group and be critiqued by all of us. So that's another portion of that advanced course.
Now, in dealing with what you deal with in terms of bloodstain pattern analysis, you're teaching, you're writing, you're lecturing,
Not
and
at
you're
all.
self-taking casework.
Not at all.
Could
They
you
should
tell the
have just
jurors
gotten
what you
Larry
do
Fiddler.
now? What is your
Could have
profession
killed
right
that
now?
role, I
Right
guarantee you.
now, I am a consulting forensic scientist. I have an office and a residence in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh my God, my eyeballs.
And I do bloodstain pattern analysis. That's
Why does this guy sound like
my
Bernie
main
Sanders?
interest. I work anywhere from 50 to 55 or 60 cases a year as a consultant. I'm hired probably 80 to 85% by defense attorneys and the other 15 or so percentage by prosecutors. I do lately, most of my prosecution work is done for Palm Beach County through the Sheriff's Office and the State Attorney's
Right.
Office. And I also, maintain my office and my teaching materials. And so I'm a consultant that actually does teaching, casework, some research when I have time. And I also, the last couple of summers, I've had an intern from the University of Florida who's a pre-med student. So that's pretty much what I do.
Now, are you also a member in an FBI working group or Federal Bureau of Investigation working group concerning bloodstain pattern analysis?
Dabble with the FBI.
Yes,
I mean,
Could you tell the jurors what that is?
Yes, it's actually the short name for it is Swigstein. That's SWGSTAIN. And that's kind of an acronym for Scientific Working Group for Bloodstain Pattern Analysis.
And when was that set up?
Well, it was set up about 4 or 5 years ago. What it is, it consists of approximately 30 to 35 individuals who are trained and have experience in bloodstain pattern analysis. The members are drawn from various agencies throughout the U.S., as well as Canada. We have members from UK, members from Holland, and a member from Australia. And they also have, in addition to persons who work for actual agencies, and I mean forensic laboratories, police agencies, et cetera, we have several of us who are private consultants like myself and Paul Kish and Paulette Sutton. So they draw from all areas of working people in bloodstain analysis.
Right. And what is the purpose of swig stain?
The purpose, and it's been talked about for years, even through IABPA, is to try to standardize bloodstain pattern analysis in terms of basic educational requirements, qualifications of instructors, ethical issues, legal issues. A lot of that comes about through admissibility of scientific evidence in court. Fry and Daubert are two areas that, depending on what state you're in, have to be met.
Let me just stop you. The jurors don't know what Fry and Daubert means, so just explain that if you could in layperson.
Sounds like a meal.
Well, a Fry standard is a standard that is set in some states.
What's for dinner, Bob? Fried Daubert. And if you don't like it, you can leave it. You won't eat. You'll go to bed hungry. Fried Alberts. What's on the menu today?
System for the admissibility of scientific evidence, and basically, as I understand it,
Mr. Chairman, I think we can interrupt you. Those are concerning legal issues, correct?
Yeah, the admissibility is the technique or the type of analysis done accepted by the scientific community, basically.
Okay. Right.
And then, of course, the Daubert has a little more complicated with error rates and things of that sort.
Okay, so you're on this group that is trying to establish standards within the blood spatter community. Why is it important to have standards?
Well, because we want everyone speaking the same language. And with that in mind, I'm on the terminology committee, which is one of the tougher ones because there's so many different sources of terminology in terms of defining terms in our particular discipline.
Could you give the jurors an example of one of the terms that has caused some problems in the bloodstain pattern analysis community?
Well, misting is one term that we're
we all actually
misting, M-I-S-T-I-N-G.
Okay.
That entire term, misting, mist-like,
these terms do get really confusing.
How accurately you can measure stains. We're not talking about measuring small droplets in air. You can't do that I know of. But we're talking about the net result of what droplet has made a certain size stain.
Let's bring it on over. I know he's telling us what it is, but I'm still going to look it up with the AI Google machine. Misting blood spatter refers to a very fine, almost aerosol-like pattern of blood droplets created by a high-velocity impact, typically associated with gunshot wounds. Here we go, getting right in there, where the force of the projectile disperses blood into tiny mist-like particles that can travel a significant distance from the source of the injury. It is considered a characteristic of high-velocity impact spatter. I always want to say splatter in blood stain pattern analysis. Key points about misting. Appearance: due to the small droplet size, it looks like a fine mist rather than distinct blood drops. I think we can all envision that. Cause: high impact force, usually from a projectile like a bullet traveling at a high speed. Forensic significance: when observed at a crime scene, it strongly suggests a gunshot wound can help determine the direction of line and the position of the shooter. Okay.
That's one example.
And why is it a problem, for instance, if one scientist calls something misting and another scientist doesn't?
Well, see, misting in and of itself implies that you're dealing with a gunshot. And misting actually is when it is visible, is ordinarily with the exit wound, because there's a lot more energy associated with exit wounds. Backspatter, Paul Kish and I have discussed this at length. Like, how often have you ever seen misting with backspatter? And I've seen it once. Paul may have seen it once or twice. So is that term really necessary? That's part of the issue that we're having. And another issue about terminology is the low, medium, high velocity, which is what McDonald developed early on. we're getting away from that and getting into more of a taxonomy approach, meaning we have spatter stains and non-spatter stains, because there's so much of an overlap. High velocity based on size alone, millimeter or less, is also overlaps with spatter you see with beatings. It overlaps with spatter you see with people coughing or expirating blood. So these are things that we have to be careful of. So we try to separate spatter from non-spatter, passive stains, pools of blood from spatter stains, and then we try to use case-driven facts to determine if we have impact spatter due to gunshot, if we have expiratory blood, is there blood around the nose and mouth, can you exclude expiratory blood? Satellite spatter is another
What
issue.
is satellite spatter?
Satellite spatter occurs when even a single drop of blood will fall onto a surface, and depending upon the nature of that surface, may spatter. And the actual parent stain will be very irregular, and you'll see small...
Pattern stain?
Sorry?
Did you say actual pattern stain?
Parent, did you use
Parent, I'm sorry.
Parent, okay.
Yeah, just slow me down if I'm going too
And the
fast here.
actual parent
Okay,
stain?
slow down, you're going too fast.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, you'll have a parent stain with small spatters around it, which have not only a horizontal perspective, but also a vertical perspective. And then you also have the issue of blood dripping into blood, or rapid bleeding. You can get small droplets of blood that are kind of ricocheting off that main stream of blood, and that's called satellite spatter. The size of satellite spatter can also overlap with gunshot spatter and beating spatter and expiratory blood. So that's
I
the
remember
reason we're
watching
getting
the
away from this
staircase
low,
and
medium, high
actually
velocity.
thinking the owl.
And correct me if I'm
Theory made a
wrong,
lot of
then, in
sense.
terms of applying
Like-
terms such as misting, it may imply that a conclusion
It
was
just makes
formed before an
sense.
analysis was done. Would that be correct?
Well, perhaps, but I don't think the term is even necessary. Impact spatter due to gunshot is perfectly fitting for every case that I know of.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you took courses early on, and you also had a book early on that you co-authored with Mr. William Eckert, correct?
Dr. William Eckert, yes.
Dr. William Eckert, I apologize. And there's been
Wasn't looking over like he
this
could do it better
about
all
a
the time.
machine, a
I could
paddle
kill
that
this right
spurts
now.
out blood.
This should
Could
be
you
my
just tell
spot.
us about the machine, then I want to show a couple pictures
I bet he is so pissed it wasn't him, Spector, in the movie, huh?
and ask you to explain it.
Okay. When I took my course from Herbert McDonnell, one of the experiments he actually demonstrated to us, and I don't know why, but he referred to it as the infernal machine. It's almost like the mad scientist has got this device. And what it was, essentially, was a cardboard box that within the box was attached a motor, and the motor had a paddle blades on it, not too much unlike a propeller. And there was a square cut out of the side of the box right opposite these blades of the propeller. And on the top, there was another hole cut out, which was right above this.
I'm going to pause it. We got to take a side quest because I'm very confused about what's happening. What does this mean? What are these? Are these vultures or turkeys? What the fuck is happening here? Turkeys seen an eerily circling gravestone. What the fuck? Bro. What the fuck? She's the chosen one. We gotta go take a pair. She's the chosen one. Something's going on. She's got the secrets. Oh my god.
Propeller device. And what he would do would take some human blood into a pipette, and he would start the engine, start the motor, and it would be spinning around like crazy. And he'd drop blood down through the hole onto the paddle blades. And what would happen is that blood would be projected out of the side hole onto this white paper. And it was to demonstrate how far spatters can travel when they're given some horizontal momentum or projection.
Okay. And you use the term momentum. Momentum means what?
Well, it's the energy imparted, to the source of blood,
Morning,
basically.
Kathy.
Your Honor, I'd like to have the next exhibit marked, James, figure 3.13.
Would
please,
be
John.
H, not upper H.
That's true. That is true.
3.13. And if you could try to enlarge that a little bit.
We need to know.
Okay, thank you. Is this a picture out of the book that you...
Shit, Kathy gonna come through here. Coming in the door, throwing some money in the pot right out the gate. Passing the plate for Pastor Steve, 420. Thank you so much. Let's go. Love to see that, Kathy. Thank you so much. Boom. As we work towards finishing out a will here. Let's see where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, we're 4 away from getting a will this morning here.
You co-authored one of your earlier books on blood spatter?
Yes, that was the 1988 book. You can see we're still using high velocity at that time. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as you appreciate the overlapping of sizes. This shows the essentially the first foot or so of that white paper that was laid on the floor in front of the aperture from which the blood was being projected out. And you're seeing extremely small spatter.
I don't know anymore.
Much less than a millimeter. It's hard to see the ruler, which is a little dark there, but you can, if you look carefully, you can see for the most part, they're all less than a millimeter in size. Okay. So that was the first part of that paper.
All right. Does that picture accurately demonstrate the distribution and location of the impact blood spatter produced with a little momentum at a distance of 1 foot? I'm sorry, produced with a little bit of momentum at a distance of 1 foot?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not meant to replicate gunshot spatter. It's simply to show how far small droplets of sub-millimeter droplets of blood can travel.
Does it also reflect distribution and location?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, could we mark the next exhibit, Jennifer 3.14, James, figure 3.14?
Non-upper I.
Okay. Now, is this another picture using the same little machine with momentum that you reflected in the book?
Yes. This is all one series of doing this, and this is at 6 feet away. In the book, I didn't include 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I just used 1 and 6 foot distances. And the purpose is here to show at 6 feet, you're still getting predominantly millimeter size stains, and some are still less. You can see the millimeter stains are much darker, but you can see, especially just above numbers millimeters 6 and 7 up there, you can see, or centimeters, I'm sorry, you can see some small stains. Just as a demonstration to show that when you do have a horizontal projection and force, that even the small droplets can travel, up to that distance. And that was the whole purpose of Herb's demonstration.
Okay, so does this picture accurately reflect some type of distribution and location of both sub-millimeter and millimeter stains at a distance of 6 feet produced with a little momentum?
Yes, and again, it's not intended to show what gunshot spatter will do, but rather simply the horizontal motion with a force.
Okay. With momentum, correct?
Yes.
Is there any agreement that you are aware of in the blood-stained pattern community which says that blood spatter, back spatter, can only go a maximum of 3 feet?
No. As a matter of fact, I researched this extensively in the past, and more so in the last several weeks. I went through every source I could find in my collection. I've talked to numerous people, and there's simply a wide variation. anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, which I think I even mentioned in my second edition, and even maybe in the new book, where you see it frequently. And although we also say up to 4 feet as well. Other sources, including foreign articles, anywhere from there up to 5 to 6 feet. And it depends on, I mean, how much can you replicate a gunshot event? You can do experimental exercises with bloody sponges, which is, you know, it's about the best we can handle, at least in our courses. I'm aware of the articles where, you know, animals were shot, calves and dogs, et cetera, but there's no way to duplicate. And you have to go on your case information, and, you know, you have to talk to a lot of people. That's what we learn at conferences. We talk about things like that. Well, how far does backspatter go? I mean, at my next IABPA conference, I think I'm going to, you know, present a paper on it. Like, where are we with this particular subject, and how precise can we be?
All right. And the experiments that you indicated do they show that momentum can drive various sizes of backspatter longer?
Yes, I mean, that's, in addition to showing that the larger droplets travel further, I mean, we know that because they have a greater mass, and, you know, the air resistance the air resistance does not affect them as much as it does the smaller ones. We know that. But if you have additional force or pressure, whatever you want to call it, that you can exceed the minimal distances very easily.
Did you ever suggest to anyone in teaching that backspatter from intraoral gunshot wounds, whether they be millimeter or sub-millimeter, are limited to 3 feet or less?
No. In fact, we very rarely talk about that particular distance. We usually, and the best terminology, I think, when you're dealing with a case, and it's even in my report, we say in proximity to or in the vicinity of a gunshot event. And I think that's the best way to approach it without getting too specific, and especially if you have limited information.
Now, you also have published other pictures of the size and location and distribution of backspatter. Have you not in your books?
Yes, we covered the subject. In fact, most bloodstain pattern analysis books do, to one extent or the other. Our book that I've done, I say ours, with Paulette Sutton and Paul Kish, Bevel and Gardner in their book spend quite a bit of time on it. Anita Wonder with her book Blood Dynamics, and also Herb McDonald with Bloodstain Patterns Revised, I think, is or second revision is his latest. All these books talk about forward and backspatter.
Now, may I have another exhibit marked, Your Honor? James, right. Slide 3.
That will be non-opal J.
James, slide 3. Does this picture accurately reflect backspatter at 6 inches in terms of size, location, and distribution?
Yes, for the experimental design. That is a white cardboard that was set up in a box 6 inches behind a bloody sponge that was suspended. And there was also a white cardboard 6 inches ahead of the bloody sponge. And behind this target, the gun was fired through the back of that cardboard. You can see the hole is kind of beveled outward. And that is the backspatter from the bloody sponge at a distance of 6 inches. Okay. And I do not call that misting. Those stains are not, and you'll see with the forward spatter what I'm getting at here.
All right. May I have James, slide 4 up? Your Honor, another marking, please.
Non-opal K.
Non-opal. Words I've never heard.
Actually, before we do that, we'll go ahead and take a recess for 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonition, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Keep in mind the aberration in the middle of the room, folks.
Court's in session.
It will see you to the doors.
All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present is heretofore. You may resume.
Thank you. Jennifer, could you put K9? I think when we left, you were giving me K9. Okay. Mr. James, when we left, we had just marked for identification K9. Is this a fair representation of what is in your
It's
book? Or
pretty
is this a
boring.
picture
It's
from
very
your book,
boring.
actually?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is that a
Isn't
fair
it
representation
boring?
of the distribution and location of backspatter at 12 inches for this experiment?
Yes.
And how was this done?
Well, it was the same experiment, but this target at 12 inches replaced the one that was 6 inches behind and required an additional shot through the bloody sponge to create. So we did 6 inches first and then 12 inches.
Okay. And may we have another marking, Your Honor? I need James slide 2.
Non-upper L.
And this is a slide also that you have put together?
Yes.
And what is this, let me just ask you, what does this demonstrate?
Well, this demonstrates simultaneously forward and back spatter. And the reason we can do that is that we laid this cardboard below the bloody sponge, so it picked up the forward and back on the horizontal perspective. So you can see, what's interesting about this image is that you can see the preponderance of the stains and the misting, or we call it rouging also, which is associated with the forward spatter. And you can see the diminished amount of back spatter, and that's generally true, that when you do have forward spatter, it usually exceeds in concentration and amount than compared to back spatter.
Okay.
And there's
Interesting.
no misting with that associated back
Insane to
spatter.
think about also.
And is that because
Looks
some
like
of
it
the
was
energy of the
not
forward
that
spatter goes
old.
out
Holy shit.
when traveling with the bullet?
Yes, and it's a higher form of energy too.
Now, is there something called satellite spatter?
Yes?
What is that?
Satellite spatter is spatter which is produced from,
Does that
for
happen in
example,
California?
a drop of blood falling onto a surface, and when the droplet hits the surface, depending upon the nature of the surface, rougher surfaces will give you more satellite spatter. The droplet hits, and then the surface tension that's holding the droplet together through air is ruptured by the surface, and it creates spining around the edges of the stain, that is little projections, as well as some small droplets that are projected away from what we call the parent stain.
Okay, let me just stop you and interrupt you right there. Did you bring or pull a slide together that demonstrates a vertical perspective of satellite spatter?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have another marking, James, slide 5?
Non-upper M.
Okay, there's a laser pointer right to your
Yes.
left near your water
Yes.
cup. Could you explain to the jurors exactly what this shows?
Yes, I just talked about a single
Shot
drop
at Cutler.
causing satellite spatter, which
Still just
certainly
lurking.
happens a lot, but frequently.
We never got to open his
you also
mouth
have
again.
a phenomenon where blood is dripping
After
into
freaking out on the
blood
judge.
that's already accumulated, one drop after the other, and the satellite spatter is what you see, which is rebounding away from this parent stain. And of course, the more drops that fall,
I'm
the
out.
larger this parent stain
Math is
gets, but you have a
not working for me
horizontal
now.
perspective going out from the circumference of the parent stain, as well as if you had a target that was situated vertically.
CH is giving lessons
Many
in the
of
chat
these
right now.
droplets that you see on the periphery up here are going to strike that vertical target. So you have two surfaces that are available potentially for satellite spatter to land
Right.
on. And it's important to recognize, although
Water,
that diagram
water.
is not representative of the size, it's only diagrammatic, that the size range can be within that of some gunshot and beating type events.
In other words, you can get sub-millimeter particles from satellite spatter
Oh, yes, you can.
along with larger particles.
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you also get particles from what is called expirated blood?
Yes.
What is expirated blood in your community?
In our community, our bloodstained community, we refer to small blood droplets that are projected from an injured portion of the airway. And that can be anywhere from a hole in the chest that has damaged the lungs. You can get, expirated air coming out from that, or any other portion of the airway, whether it be up into the trachea and also through the nose and the mouth. Injury in those areas will produce blood. And if the person is capable of exhaling, you may see evidence of that in the form of very, very small droplets of blood, which, again, they overlap with size ranges of beating and shooting events. And it's a misconception that these droplets are readily identifiable by air bubbles.
Okay, let me just stop you before we get into that. When you say taking an exhale, can satellite spatter be caused by an agonal breath?
You mean expirated blood?
Expirated blood, I'm sorry. Expirated blood be caused by an agonal breath.
By definition, it requires an exhalation to have occurred.
Okay, and you brought a slide with you to demonstrate what spatter looks like from an expirated breath, correct?
I did.
All right, Your Honor, can we have another marking? James, slide 6, please, Jennifer. Okay. Now, what does this show?
Well, that shows a cotton material. I know that because I made this myself, using my own blood. I put some of my own blood, in my mouth, and I coughed.
Did
and I produced
to
these
get this
small stains. This was relative
analysis?
to a case I was working on at the time. And you can see the size range is quite small. They're a millimeter or less. And again, this was done to compare to some stains on some clothing on a case I worked a few years ago.
Okay. Now, you started telling this jury that it's a misconception that there has to be an air bubble in a spatter caused by an expiration. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes. Well, in our training, teaching, and especially in advanced courses, we actually have either one of the instructors, Paul or I, or we usually get a volunteer from one of our students to actually perform this. And I'm a med tech and I draw blood, and we usually have a med tech in the class anyway, because it's amazing how many forensic scientists started off as medical technologists. I know probably 10 or 12. Anyway, we have them do this, and very rarely do you see air bubbles. And especially on fabric. Well, first of all, on a dried stain, it's impossible to see a bubble.
Why is that?
Because if there were a bubble, it then would become a vacuole or just an empty circle. I mean, air bubbles are only seen usually in fresh blood. And it's usually if someone has, lung damage and they're frothing blood. Those are true air bubbles. Occasionally, you will see them in, if you do expirated blood and look at it closely right away, you may see a couple. But if you are going to have evidence of expirated blood, you'll see little vacuoles where bubbles used to be.
Okay. Did you ever teach in your advanced course in San Diego in December 2006 that there has to be an air bubble in expirated blood?
No, in fact, quite the contrary. We taught, and using an example like this, there's no evidence of any vacuoles or air bubbles. That's simply spattered blood, which has been produced, I know because I did it, by expirated blood. And people rely too much upon, what they think they should see. And in reality, you don't have that many criteria for expirated blood. Lately, people are starting to look into the enzyme amylase, which is present in saliva, as a chemical test to make a differentiation. But aside from that, if you see mucus strands, that's another criteria, but many times you don't.
Would it be improper in the forensic science community to determine whether there was expirated spatter on a person by the existence or presence or absence of an air bubble?
No.
Could you do that?
No, when you see a vacuole, you may have more indication, but as I'm trying to emphasize, many times you don't have that criteria when in fact it is expirated blood.
Okay. Now, let's go on to luminol procedure. Are you familiar with the procedure of luminol?
I am.
And how are you so familiar?
Well, I have been involved using luminol, with some frequency. I don't do it much anymore, but I'm familiar with, there's various solutions that are made up. There's commercial products that are available, and also in my forensic science book, and also the new bloodstain book, there's a chapter devoted to luminol.
What is luminol appropriate for?
Luminol is probably best described as a search technique. And it's kind of like the search of last resort. You get to a crime scene or a death scene, whatever it may be, and you've done all your work otherwise, documenting bloodstains and taking photographs, et cetera. And then there may be some indication
I think we're
that
4
maybe
away,
a
Kathy.
body was moved or there was movement. There may have been a possible cleanup attempt. That's when luminol comes into
That's the
play.
truth.
Footwear impressions. It's very good to track a person's movement, especially on dark surfaces where the actual footwear impression may not be visible without any chemical enhancement. That's essentially what you're doing. You're enhancing those very light, faded stains.
Is it an appropriate or recommended procedure in the bloodstain pattern community to find blood stains, blood spatter or back spatter?
No, I and others do not recommend the use of luminol to look for spatters.
Why is that?
Well, as I believe Mr. Pex alluded to in his article, you can get false positives. The luminol solution can self-luminesce, and I've seen that happen. Sometimes the entire bottle is luminescing as you're spraying it, and so you've got some contamination there. You could also get false negatives depending upon the situation.
Well, let's talk about when you can get false negatives. Are there certain factors that would indicate that a false negative could occur in a case with luminol?
Certain factors?
Yes. Let me rephrase the question. Are certain situations inappropriate to use luminol because you may get a false negative?
Yes.
All right. And what would be some of those situations?
Well, it would be a situation that if you're looking for spatters, that's one reason not to do luminol.
Right.
Because you may get a false positive, or a false negative. And
Why?
well, because small spatters of blood can be difficult to see.
No, I
even
can't
when
speed it up,
when
sadly.
they luminesce.
On the old
luminol
court. This is
may
directly
dilute
from
out the
court
stains,
TV. It's
the
not on
small stains.
YouTube.
Let's talk about that. What do you mean the luminol can
could.
dilute out the small
We
stains?
could be able to get through some
Well,
of this a
the
little
luminol is an
faster.
aqueous solution, and blood is somewhat can be dissolved
I've been pretty spaced out on this
in
guy.
a aqueous solution. So you may be diluting it out. I mean, you're talking millimeter or sub-millimeter stains.
Okay. And did you see some of the pictures regarding this death scene at 1700 Grandview in Alhambra?
I did.
And did you see some of the pictures of the people walking around on the carpet where the decedent was?
Yes, before the body was moved and then during the moving process of Ms. Clarkson.
Were there certain things there that were contraindicated for then doing a luminol test after that?
Did she
Well,
say
yes, in my
contra?
opinion, it was not an appropriate series of events prior to that luminol being done.
Tell us why.
Well, because you had multiple people walking over the carpet. Well, they weren't wearing booties, which, of course, if they were, they could have saved them and found if there was any blood they had tracked, from the scene. You're crushing and pulverizing any potential spatter down deep into the fibers, and this is all, contrary to, it lessens your possibility of finding it, and especially depending upon how you look for your luminescence.
Okay. Would you have to soak all the fibers down almost to the floor in order to soak a carpet properly in this situation?
Yeah, if there were pulverized particles, right, you would have to, make sure that the chemical reacted with anywhere those stains may have been.
what is the appropriate procedure for making a determination whether there's blood spatter or back spatter on a carpet, especially one that's got a higher fiber?
Well, I have been involved in several cases where, and proper procedure, in my opinion, when you're looking for spatter, is to make it a priority to collect that portion of carpet. Just cut it right out and take it. Before
Take it to do what?
take it to a forensic laboratory and look at it with a stereo microscope, and then possibly seeing something suspicious there, do a phenolphthalein or a KM test, and other tests to prove that it's blood, human blood, etc. Another way to protect a scene, which really hasn't been talked about, I know they do it in UK a lot, which I think is a good idea. They actually have crime scene or scene platforms that are made of metal or plastic, and they have maybe an inch or so of space underneath, and they lay these down on areas that they want to test later, and that's what they walk on. They don't walk on a carpet. They lay down these platforms and use those to protect and save evidence that would possibly otherwise be contaminated.
Okay. And that's to protect spatter, for instance, from being taken out on people's shoes?
Or protect any area, including for trace evidence.
Okay. Assuming that you do luminol at a scene, can you see, or is the recommended procedure standing up and looking to see luminescence to look for blood spatter?
Well, no, I think you're limiting your vision there as far as looking for small areas of luminescence, and especially on the millimeter or less size. There's a better way to approach that if you, in fact, are going to do luminol for blood spatter.
And what is that?
And that would be to get down close to it with a magnifying device. They're called loops of various magnifications, and that would give you a better perspective, in my opinion.
Okay. Have you ever taught in any of your classes that the appropriate procedure for looking for tiny sub-millimeter or millimeter blood stains is to do a luminol test?
No, we don't teach that. Rather, we teach that we don't recommend luminol for making a spatter determination, rather for the larger areas of footwear impressions, as I said before, cleanup attempts, swipes and wipes and things of that sort.
Morning.
Okay. And are you aware of any ASCLD procedure that makes it a recommendation to look for back spatter in this type of situation through a luminol test?
Not that I'm aware of. My laboratory preceded ASCLD, so we didn't have those types of criteria to deal with. But from my reading of procedural manuals, the ASCLD only actually determines if your luminol preparation meets the appropriate standard in the spraying device, but they don't say much about the interpretation.
Okay. In other words, the ASCLD procedure determines the material and methodology for performing.
Basically, interpretation skills.
You have to let me answer the question first, or else it's just for material methodology for determining how to apply luminol, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is material methodology different for whether or not it's an appropriate procedure in a situation?
Yes.
Okay. And is it different from how you look for back spatter or recommendations for looking for back spatter?
Yeah, I don't know of any recommendations looking for back spatter with luminol.
Now, if a luminol test is done, is it important to wait 48 hours?
Well, this was recommended by Dale Lau, I believe, who wrote the chapter in our bloodstain book.
And why is that?
The reason for that is that the luminol reacts with the ferrous and ferric ions, the iron ions in heme, because that's contained in hemoglobin.
I'm sorry. The reason for that is that the luminol reacts with
the ferrous and ferric ions, IONS, in the heme, HEME, which is part of the hemoglobin molecule. And the test becomes more sensitive if you allow a period of time for these ions to oxidize more, and you get a more brilliant luminescence.
Okay, all right. So have you ever recommended, or have you ever taught that you should not use luminol because it can give you a false negative?
Yes.
And is that a procedure that you've mentioned in your advanced courses to students who have taken that before, or a recommendation that you do not use luminol looking for a backspatter because it can give you a false negative?
Perhaps not that specifically, but we do talk about the limitations of luminol.
Now, you did review certain pictures and evidence in regard to this specific case, correct?
I did.
Okay. And you and Paul Kish, did you, besides reviewing records, did you actually see some of the evidence?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And was that at the sheriff's lab last May 2006?
Yes, the dates were May 13th, which is a Saturday, and Sunday, May 14th of 2006.
Okay. And did you look at pictures, for instance, of the chair that the decedent was found in?
Yes, the chair was not among the evidence that we were able to see at the laboratory. It was in some other location and wasn't available to us, so we relied upon the photographs that were taken by Dr. Harold.
Okay. And did you look at photographs of the slip that the decedent was wearing at the time she was found?
Yes, and we actually saw the slip as well.
Okay. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the slip. Could we have K to the 6 up?
K to the 6 to the 3 to the 4. You know me. We out here in the streets, yeah. Got Stuart James on the stand. He's up here. He's spitting every book he's ever written. He wants you to buy. It's Stuart James. He's a wit.
Turned around
Larry
like
Fiddler
that.
ain't sure. He says, yo, fuck,
Okay, and this is the
fuck
actual
you.
slip you saw,
I don't
correct?
like it.
Yes.
When the Bible says, yo, what you
Were there important
got?
items with
I got
regard
books,
to
bitch.
the slip
I got
that you
books,
took
bitch.
note of?
Well, yes.
Okay, and what were those?
Well, first of all, it was not disputed that there was spatters of blood on the slip.
Were you able to see the tape lift that was taken from the top portion of the slip around the breast
He'll
line?
personalize
Yes, and that's
any
why there's a
book.
void area there. Some stains were removed by the tape lift.
Okay, and did you see the slip laid out like
Potatoes.
this when you also looked at it? Now, there's been some discussion about making a determination of
I can rap, baby.
trajectory or
Wish I could
directionality
rap.
based on this slip. I'd like to talk to you about that
Wish I could
concept,
rap.
okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you
Let's
make
do
a
a write-up deal, right?
determination of the location of the decedent's head at the time she was shot? In other words, whether it was to the right, the center, or the left on the basis of the blood spatter on this slip?
No, I would not
Blue on
recommend
blue
doing that.
today.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, you have
Live shot of the ghoul.
multiple stains, and I recall from earlier testimony that and notes that the arrows indicate direction of travel. You've got multiple directions of travel there, and if you look at the scene photographs, you'll see that with Lana Clarkson in the chair, that her slip that she's wearing, that particular clothing item, is rippled quite a bit. And so that would account for different directionalities, because some of the droplets that came down on the slip when it was rippled, they don't look the same when the slip is actually, spread out. So, and again, some of the stains that were used to determine directionality were fairly large, indicated, they were teardrop shaped with a tail. Those stains may not even have been backspatter.
Okay, let me show you a picture, and we're going to need another marking, Your Honor.
The next one would be O, on up below.
We're gonna have to go with the Elmo. Apparently, this one won't come up.
All right.
All right, now, you reviewed this picture in the past?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And the large stain that you were speaking of, is that the one in the upper right corner here?
Yes, there was more than one, but that's an example of one.
All right. Now, why is it that you can't use a stain such as that to determine directionality of Ms. Clarkson's head at the time the gunshot went off?
Well, that particular stain is quite large, and we know there's some evidence of post-injury activity. That stain looks more the size of a passive drop.
And when you say passive drop, what do you mean by passive drop?
I mean a drop or drops of blood that have been airborne as a result of very little energy, not enough energy to call them spatter.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, then what you're saying is that large stain that shows some directionality is not spatter?
It appears to be too large to be impact spatter. There's no other stains that we have on other objects that are that size. It, in my opinion, is not a spatter. It's a passive stain.
Okay. And therefore, would that mean that it would be inappropriate to use that stain to determine directionality?
Yeah, if you're trying to locate the mouth at the time of the gunshot, you can't use a stain that was likely produced afterwards, for one. And secondly, many of the stains, as I observed, Paul Kish and I observed on this fabric, their directionalities are difficult in the first place because of the nature of the fabric.
Why does that make it difficult?
Well, because you can't, in order to be precise about the location or the origin of that spatter, you really need a solid surface. I can't remember ever anyone doing a three-dimensional determination on clothing. It's usually done on walls and ceilings and floors.
It's horrible.
Because you need to be able to measure accurately
It's just the tone.
the width and the length of a blood stain, which trigonometrically with the sine function will give you the angle of impact.
Oh, Brooklyn,
And
morning.
is that called a convergence?
No, that's called the three-dimensional
Okay.
aspect in space. Prior to that, in order to do a convergence, you must draw.
What is a convergence?
Yes, a convergence are the result of straight lines passing through the long axis of elongated bloodstains, and hopefully they will come to a fairly common area. That's a two-dimensional aspect, and then by utilizing your angle of impact, you then can make it a three-dimensional. And there's no way to do that on spatters of blood on someone's clothing sitting in a chair. I mean, it actually wasn't done.
If anyone tried to make a determination based on spatter directionality on this slip, would that be appropriate or inappropriate?
Well, it just isn't something that can be done with any degree of certainty, in my opinion.
Would it indicate anything to you?
Well, it would indicate that any attempt at that would be something contrary to what we teach.
Okay. Would any experienced trained blood spatter analyst attempt to make a determination of a head position based on this slip?
They shouldn't, no.
Now, can you tell whether any of the spatters on this slip were from an expirated blood from an agonal breath?
Well, there's certainly some in the same size range, but then I have to pass the issue on to a pathologist because in the reports I read, death was fairly instantaneous. Agonal breath is something I can't testify about. But you have the other criteria. You have blood in the nose and mouth. So if a pathologist can tell us, see, we provide data in a case, bloodstain data, and we have to rely upon the pathologist to give us data as well. So I can't say if there's expiratory blood there unless I'm confident hearing from a pathologist that yes, a breath or two could have been taken. Absent that, then essentially you rule it out.
In any event, if you had a blood stain from an expirated breath, would it have an air bubble in it?
Not necessarily. Very rarely would it have an air bubble.
Okay. So on this specific slip, you could not make a determination whether anything was from an expirated breath by the mere usage of whether an air bubble existed or didn't exist?
Oh, right, correct, yes.
Okay. Now, you also indicated you looked at pictures of the chair.
I did.
Okay, could we have 4.182, Your Honor? I'll need a marking.
That would be non-opal P.
P?
P.
4.182 BP. Is this one of the pictures of the chair that you looked at?
Yes, that's an overall view.
Okay. And could we have 4.182? This would be
Q.
Q. Okay, and what are we looking at here?
You're looking at the cloth covering of the right side armrest.
Okay. And what is important to you with regard to this picture?
Well, you can see you have an accumulation of blood that has dripped down onto that surface.
Okay. And in this picture Q number 9, which Jennifer's about to mark, if we could. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Did you notice anything concerning satellite spatter here?
Yes, there is satellite spatter associated with that accumulation of blood, which is a large parent stain.
Could you point that out, the parent stain with your...
Yeah, we're talking about this area up in here. So satellite spatter would be distributed around the periphery. And I believe that that's 40.3, if I'm seeing it right, upside down, is one area of, likely satellite spatter.
Okay, we're going to go through those. Is it appropriate to make a determination as to the position of someone's head at the time they were shot based on using this chair and this spatter on this position here?
No, the only relevant information we're getting from the blood on this side of the chair is that we know that the head of Gladys Clarkson was to the right while she was bleeding on that side prior to it going to the left. But it doesn't tell us, it doesn't give us relevant information about the exact position or precise position of the head at the time the firearm discharged.
Does the fact that it's satellite spatter have anything to do with that?
With the gunshot?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
It's a post-injury event.
Okay.
So
let's look at some of the individual stains here, which led you to your opinion. Could we have, Jen, 4.179? And, Your Honor, I'll need the next marking.
R.
You picked out this picture of this stain for a reason?
Yes. This is the front, I believe the front right area of the cushion of the chair. And you can see the green arrow designating 40-1, and it's pointing toward a stain, and there's other similarly sized stains in the general area.
And what does that tell you as a bloodstain pattern analyst?
Well, it's spatter, and we know that there is a satellite spatter producing event or events going on, bleeding down the right side of the body, and not just dripping, but also, bleeding down the right side, coming, from either nose or mouth or both. This rapid flow of blood can also produce satellite spatter. It doesn't necessarily have to hit a surface to do that. Anyway, so we're left with the thought, well, this is either impact spatter or satellite spatter in that particular area. And I have difficulty, making a differentiation between the two.
On this particular stain, 40.1.
Yes.
Okay. Could we go to stain 40.2? Jen, that would be 4.187, Your Honor, and I'll need another marking.
S9.
It's not. Okay, and you picked this picture out to discuss satellite spatter. Could you tell us what was important in this picture?
Well, first of all, the picture is it's
That's upside down.
It's about 90 degrees off there.
Yeah.
I believe that stain there should be going downward, but that's the interior of the right post of the armrest, as I recall. And you have some spatter there, and you can see some downward directionality. So that could be impact spatter. It could be perhaps a little satellite. It's difficult to tell.
Okay. Because it's difficult to tell whether these are satellite or impact spatters, would it be appropriate in the bloodstain community to make an analysis that someone's head was turned to the left or the right based on these stains?
Well, that creates the quandary. I mean, how do you make that differentiation when you know both events have taken place? And there's also been some other, shall we say,
Amber, that's awesome.
injury activity.
I always like when you post the pictures of them,
which is based upon
Discord.
Alteration of blood stains on her face and
Sucks
things of
about
that
the kennel
sort.
cough, though.
Okay.
So it's not a pristine situation.
There's also been some testimony that there was one stain on the purse strap of Miss Clarkson. Would it be an appropriate on the purse strap of Miss Clarkson? Would it be appropriate to make a determination as to the
purse strap?
Location of her head at the time that she was shot based on the one stain on the purse strap?
Well, as I recall,
there's
that
a
stain
tag
was,
team for
had
you.
some size to it.
Phil Spector with his manager, Bruce Cutler. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil, look at what is going on with his arm. Looks like his arm is ginormous over here. Good Lord.
It's a single stain on an object that is movable. I would not have paid a lot of attention to it for that purpose.
Okay. Even though you couldn't make a determination of the location of Lana Clarkson's head at the time as she was shot based on the slip, the chair, or the purse alone, can you use all three to make that determination?
I don't think that, when you're talking about the slip, the chair, and the purse,
Yes.
no, I think there's too many possible mechanisms there
Patricia,
that you can't separate.
straight up.
And I would be happy to conclude that her head was, somewhere above. The first bleeding episode took place on the right, but I can't position her head precisely.
Okay. Would it be inappropriate to position her head precisely to the right, to the left, or in the middle, based on the blood spatter alone?
No, I don't think you can do it, at least not to my satisfaction.
Now, you also examined the white jacket that was involved in this matter, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And was that the same time you were at the laboratory last year?
correct.
Okay. And could we have DSC-0300? Up, and I'll need a next marking, Your Honor.
T9.
Okay. What is this a picture of?
Well, this is a group of individuals that were examining evidence during, a year ago on Mother's Day weekend. Let's see here. Dr. DeMaio, Dr. Lee, Paul Kish, mannequin, and I guess I'm back there supervising or something. But we're looking at the jacket, which is on a mannequin.
Okay. And Paul Kish is the co-author of the book?
Yes, Paul is over here with his camera here.
Okay. And you two co-authored a report in this matter also, right?
We did. Well, yes.
Okay. And let me go to the next, DSC 0288, next marking, Your Honor.
The next one would be U. U9.
You know, okay. Okay, and what were you doing here?
I guess, let's see, it's Paul, myself, and I think that's Dr. DeMaio. Can't tell the person over there. We're just examining the sleeves of the jacket on the mannequin to get a perspective as to how sometimes if you look at clothing in a two-dimensional attitude,
Perfect.
you don't get the same degree of certainty. When you put it on a mannequin, you can see how what appears to be on the side may be on the back or something like that. So,
Why was examining the sleeves of this white jacket important to all of you?
well, the sleeves and the hands of persons who discharge a firearm, whether it be self-inflicted or not self-inflicted at the hand of another. And Jim Peck's pointed this out very nicely in his article. A scientific, assessment of spatter on the cuffs of the shirt and/or jacket are important in an effort to place the hand or the arm of that person in proximity to the weapon or the actual origin of the spatter.
Okay. And you examined the jacket, but you also went back and looked at all the DNA testing and everything that was done on this jacket?
Be safe out there. And
Yes,
18, holy shit, happy birthday.
This is one instance, and it's a good example.
Gammy's daughter.
The
18.
The photographs that were taken of the jacket by Lynn Harold, both the close-ups and the overalls, were actually more useful to us than looking at the actual jacket. That may sound odd.
Why was that?
Well, because the jacket, we saw it a few years later. Some stains were faded. Some stains had been removed. Some of the arrows were actually stuck to the paper that the jacket was wrapped in. So we found it much more beneficial to look at the photographs. And so it's an example of photographs are better than looking at the actual evidence in some cases.
Okay. And you actually put, on looking at the pictures, numbers to correspond to the areas of purported spatter on the jacket and transfer stains, correct?
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, well, yes, we did that for an exhibit, yes.
Okay. May I have the number labeled up, Jennifer, Your Honor?
V9.
Jay coming through with a share this morning. Hell yeah, Jay.
Okay. Can we somehow enlarge that a little bit, or no, is that it? Let's start with let's go to the bottom sleeve if we could, the left sleeve. Now, there was a stain that Dr. Harold and Mr. Renteria identified as or called stain 19B on the bottom left of the jacket. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. In your review of Mr. Renteria's, that was a 4 millimeter by 2 millimeter stain?
That's what he measured, yes.
On the edge of that cuff, was that a spatter?
No, I considered it to be a transfer stain.
What is a transfer stain?
A transfer stain is in this case, a blood stain which has been produced by
Spending a movie's length of time with this gentleman has
body
not been
wet with
pleasant.
blood that comes in contact with a non-bloody surface and transfers, if you will, some of that blood to that formerly clean object.
Does the size of that stain have anything to do with it not being a spatter?
In many cases, yes. There are situations where tiny, small stains can be considered transfer stains by looking through the stereo microscope. If the stain is totally like on top of the weave rather than embedded, then you may want to consider it as a small transfer. But in this case, on that particular area, it's a large stain, it's saturated, and it's not a spatter, it's a transfer.
Okay. Could we just pull that off, V9, pull it off for a second, Jennifer, and go to another exhibit? Your Honor, I'll need a marking on this. I'll need 19B of Jennifer.
W9.
19B.
All right.
Now, again, this is turned, there we go, thank you. 19B, this is a closer look at that lower cuff area.
Yes, it's somewhat closer.
Okay. And the number 3 above there, did you review the records to see whether there was any DNA done on that alleged spatter that's labeled number 3?
Yes, there was no DNA done on that particular
In your years of experience as a trained blood spatter person, have you ever heard of a procedure where somebody can identify dried blood, spattered blood under a microscope, and make a determination that it's blood with a 63-degree magnification?
No. I researched that as well and could not come up with any information on it whatsoever.
Okay. In all your years as a blood spatter expert, have you ever seen a procedure such as that done?
Well, no, not at 63 power. I mean, red blood cells are like, I think like 7 or so microns.
What is a micron?
Is it 1/1000th of a millimeter? I said that without stammering. That was good. So they're very, very small.
If you close your eyes, it sounds like
as a med tech, I would look at red blood cells, white blood cells on blood smears, and we would use 400 magnification to make an assessment of the blood health of that individual.
Okay. Could we go back to V for the moment, please? Did you look at the front-facing sleeve on the right side of the jacket?
Yes, I did.
Was there anything on the front-facing sleeve of the right side of the jacket that indicated any spatter that had been identified either by you or anyone else?
So we didn't see any blood on the front right of that jacket there, other than the transfer stain down here.
And a transfer stain, again, is not a spatter, right?
No.
Okay. Could we have another marking? Could I have back numbered labeled up, please? Other
Need your
marking?
next exhibit, it would be X, thank you, X to the 9th power.
Okay, could we get closer on the right-hand side, please, Jennifer? The stain that was listed as number 32 on the back side of that jacket, was that a spatter?
No, I consider it to be a transfer stain based
Why?
on,
Well, we'll get to some close-ups after lunch, but why was that?
well, because it had more features of being a transfer stain. It was small, but it was a transfer stain, in my opinion.
Now, stain 19H that Dr. Harold indicates is blood on the top of the right jacket. You see that?
Yes?
What would have to be the position of that right arm for that spatter to get there if it's blood?
Yeah, if it's blood, it's a single spatter that is on the back of the right arm. So if you look at the total picture
Oh,
of the
dude,
jacket,
the stretching's fucking
you've got
insane. It's completely
virtually no
bullshit.
spatter on the right side, and the spatter is concentrated to that what degree it is on the left side of the jacket. So for this arm to receive a spatter, if it's one produced at the same point in time as the other spatter, I don't believe the arm could have been over on this side of the body, because there's nothing here. I believe it would have to be over to be
think you're
in
right.
the territory of where the other spatter was produced.
Now, you just
There's a lot
showed a
of shitty defense
demonstration
attorney
with your
tactics in here.
right arm, back of it up above your face, correct?
Yeah, it would have to be, more likely over there where other spatter is, if it's produced at the same time.
And is that because the target has to be available, the target
Right.
in the back right sleeve for the spatter to hit it?
Right. And
Would that be inconsistent with somebody holding a gun
That's fucking team.
in the mouth of another person?
yes, that spatter was not produced during that type event.
Oh, dude, being a juror on this one would be fucking brutal. Right now, Larry Fiddler had to stop it because he needs to go get a fucking
Keep in mind
sandwich.
the admonition, 1:30 this afternoon.
Jesus, mother of God, we're not even done with this dude.
Ah, Rosin's like, I didn't smoke it for an hour and a half. I better get my dick out here for a second.
Under his chin, Jesus, left direction. And parallel.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're in recess.
No one's listening to you, Bob. All right, where are we going next? An hour 35 long with this guy, dude. Holy fuck! Oh my god. That'll get us through this time period, though. I'm going to go on. Stuart James continues his testimony. Wow. 4 names away, I believe, from a possible spin today. I believe that's still up in the air. But my God, I'm going to see where we're at. What number is this? Number 157. Holy mother of God. An entire another film length time frame with this guy to go. 157. And then we got a returning Detective Richard Tomlin coming back. But then I just wanted to see 157 to, I think it's like 130 something, or 244. There's still, holy God. That's so crazy. Dude, we're going to be going into probably after the summer, maybe even, I don't know. My God.
I have an omitted picture about the chair, and I'm sorry to divert everyone's attention back to it, but I'd like to just go back to the chair one moment if I could. 4.186, Jennifer, and Your Honor, I will need another marking for this, I believe.
Excellent.
I've got another guy here to help me get through it. You know what I'm saying?
You know what
I
I'm
missed
saying.
what X was because...
X was a photo of the back of the jacket.
Back of the jacket with numbers.
Okay. Give a thank you, and why not?
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone, for hanging out. I appreciate it.
Okay. Now, is there a parent stain on this armrest of this chair?
Yes, this is a closer view of the previous one that was much further away, but the parent stain is here, and you have around the periphery, you have the satellite spatter.
And then when you say something is satellite spatter, would that be spatter from the original gunshot, or is that something else?
No, satellite spatter occurs post-injury.
3
It's a result of blood dripping either onto a rough surface or into itself, creating the peripheral satellite spatter.
And is this a further reason why you can't use the chair to fix the position of the decedent's head in the middle, to the right, or to the left?
I mean, at the time of the discharge.
I haven't seen my second
This only
one.
gives you information as to where bleeding first occurred on the right side.
Okay. Thank you, and I apologize for bringing everyone back to that for the moment. If we could just go back to the jacket. When you were left, we were discussing stain, apparent stain 19H on the back right upper sleeve, if you recall. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now, could I have X9 up for a moment, please, Jennifer? Okay. And that would be the one, would you point that out with your little doohickey up there?
Yeah, just a moment. Can you make that a little larger?
Around the sleeve.
I have to
I
see
know
if
it's
it's
a
green.
green-
If it is,
it's a
holy
green arrow. I
shit.
just wanna be sure.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, okay, there it is.
Okay. That's the stain that you were talking about, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Jennifer, could you bring that back down, please? Bring it back down, okay. And then we were also talking previously about the lower left cuff edge on the front of the jacket, correct?
Correct.
And I'd like to then move first now to the left side of that sleeve. Can you see that? Jennifer, did you bring that up? Okay, I'd like to now talk about this red arrow right here, and I think that we have a better close-up. Could I have photograph number 10, please? And I think I'm going to be up to Z.
Z to the 9th, or non-apple Z.
Okay. That's the picture that we just looked at, number 10, near the rear left sleeve of the jacket.
Yeah, 10 refers to the number of the stain,
Okay.
actually.
And so what you did is marked what the red arrows were on the pictures, and did you find any indication that there was any DNA done on that?
No.
Okay. And it's your opinion that it was a transfer stain and not a spatter?
Yes, it looks like a very light transfer stain, and it's fairly large. You can see it's probably estimating here, probably 5-6 millimeters across. It's pretty
Okay.
large, and it's very faint.
And would that indicate then that it's not a spatter but a transfer stain?
Yes, based on what I'm seeing here, yes.
Okay. And you've been looking at stains for how many years?
Oh, gosh. Well, since about 1971, so that's been a long time. It's been over 35 years.
And it's clear to you it's not a spatter?
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer, could we now go back again to X number 9? Okay. Now, I'd like to now switch over to the right cuff again on the bottom, number 32. You point that out there? Okay. Now, again, we have some better close-ups of that. Could we go, Jennifer, to picture number 32? And I guess I'm to the 10th, A to the 10th?
This would be decouple A or A to the 10th, and after we get through to the 11th, we're in trouble, but we'll...
I hope I'm not the one up here when
All
we do
right.
that, Your Honor.
A10.
Okay. And this is a closer view of number 32?
Yes, there is a closer view than that, but the stain...
We're going to get to that one next, but this is a closer view.
Yeah,
And,
right here. You can see it's very light. It's very similar to the previous one.
Did you find any indication that there was a DNA done on that stain?
No.
And could we go to 32 close-up, please, Jennifer? That's a B to the 10th?
Yes?
Okay. Is that clear to you from that photograph that that was a transfer stain?
Yes, you can see that it's light in its color, and it's situated right on top of the weave, and that would fit the category of the transfer stain.
Okay. And what is the significance to you of the fact that it's a transfer stain?
Well, the significance in the overall picture of this case is that these transfer stains have occurred at some point in time during activity after the shot was fired. And bleeding had commenced, from Lana Clarkson.
Okay. And therefore, they would not be spatter from the original shot?
Correct.
Now, I think we discussed the three indicators on the back of the jacket. And to summarize, the two indicators in the back of the jacket, both the left cuff and the right cuff rear, are transfer stains, not spatter. So that be
Yes.
fair?
Yes.
And the one up here on the right, underneath the sleeve of the jacket, if it is a spatter, the arm position would not be consistent with somebody holding their arm into somebody's mouth.
Right. In other words, simply put, the area where the spatter is has to be exposed to the source of the spatter. And the spatter will travel, again, according to gravity and air resistance, and it's going to go either in a straight line or a parabolic arc, and it doesn't go upward once it's down. It's got to go just down or across. So.
Now, can we go back, Jennifer, briefly to V number 9, the front view of the jacket with all the numbers? And by the way, you put the indicator, directed that the numbers be put in here to match the numbers on the arrows so that we could all keep track about where the alleged staining was?
Yes, I think it makes it much clearer, easier to see.
And the sizes that you've indicated, directed to be put on here, those were taken from Mr. Renteria's diagram as to what the sizes that were measured of the specific stains?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, we started talking earlier on about 19B, which is on the left cuff front. We've already talked about the back being a transfer, but left cuff front. You see that?
19B, yes.
Okay. And above that is going to be stain number, alleged stain number 3, right above that, Jennifer. So I'd like you to direct your attention to these two right now, okay? Okay. 19B, could we go, Jennifer, to 19B zoom, and Your Honor, I'll need C to the 10th?
Yes.
this again now is the left cuff front edge.
That's correct.
And the size of that stain, as Mr. Renteria measured that you had directed put on this picture, is 4 millimeters by 2 millimeters?
Yes, that's what I recall.
Okay. Why do you believe that this is a transfer stain and not a spatter?
Well, primarily the size of it is greater than that would be of an impact spatter, and it appears simply just to be soaked into the material right on the cuff like that, and so I would call it a transfer stain.
Okay. And then right above that, by the way, there was DNA taken on this, correct?
Yes, there was.
Okay. Now, right above that, we saw stain number 3. Jennifer, could we go to picture number 3? I think I'm D to the 10th now.
Yes?
Okay. That was right above 19B on the left cuff. That's above that. Did you come to the opinion that that was a transfer stain?
Yes, again, for the same criteria, it's on top of the weave in these kind of like brushed right across the top, and I would call that a small transfer stain as well.
Okay. And I noticed that we forgot to put the word transfer. With your permission, I'd like to write that on that exhibit afterwards, number 3.
Oh, you had my permission.
Okay,
Sure.
the judge's permission.
Well, you can't write on an exhibit if you want to add it to it somehow, but don't just add it on it.
Well, I have 19, can I make this 19D to the 10th 1 perhaps? We have it.
That's getting too hard the numbering, that would be way too hard to follow.
We're sure we can work it out, Your Honor.
All right.
Okay. But this is a transfer stain in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And this again is below the elbow on the left
Yes.
cuff.
Above the cuff, yes.
Okay. So 19B is a transfer on the left cuff front. Number 3 is a transfer on the left cuff front, correct?
Yes.
Now, on the jacket, and again, so we get some perspective, I'd like to go back briefly to V9, please.
It is raining again. Hopefully it'll be all right. All right, took so long.
V9. Okay. And the stain that I'm next going to like to ask you to talk about is 19D, the top one. Here, see that? So that everyone's attention knows what we're talking about, okay?
Hey, morning, Michelle. Get in here.
Okay,
coming in.
now, that's 19D.
No.
Yes.
And just bear with me for
I always
one
thought about
second.
restarting Dexter again. That was a damn good show.
Now, 19D was measured as a 2 millimeter stain by Mr. Renteria. Remember that?
Yes.
Is that size significant to you?
Well, it's a small stain, and it's certainly in the size range of a spatter. 2 millimeters is not, it's one greater than 1 millimeter.
Okay.
And we often see spatter stains that size.
It's clearly not a sub-millimeter stain, is it?
No.
Okay. And can we go to 19D close-up? And I think I'm now on E to the 10th, Your Honor?
You would be?
Okay. It's E to the 10th after, thank you. And was this stain, as far as you could see, ever collected for DNA?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Did you see indications that there was a KM presumptive positive under a 63-degree magnification stereoscope?
Yes.
Okay. What is a KM test in your industry for a blood spatter?
Well, certainly KM, which stands for Kasselmeyer, is the standard phenolphthalein test. You can certainly do those under a stereo microscope because you're looking for a color change. So in that regard, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
Okay. And in your business, is that usually followed up with something?
Well, it depends how many stains you're going to collect, for ultimate human testing or DNA.
Okay. And if it is followed up, what would be the procedure to follow it up generally that you recommend when you teach?
Well, we don't teach a lot about, most of our students are quite familiar with the phenethylene test. We talk about it perhaps a little bit, but you would collect whatever remained of the stain and, submit it for testing. There may not be enough depending upon the size.
All right, and this is a 2 millimeter size. Have you ever collected for DNA in your criminalist experience, 2 millimeter stain?
Thinking about it, I can't say that I have because when I was actually collecting samples for testing, it was actually pre-DNA.
Okay.
We would collect them for genetic markers in PGM,
Okay.
which preceded DNA.
And did you do that on 2 millimeter sizes at that point, even then?
I'm sure we did.
Now, if we can go back again so we get some focus to V9 to look at the number jacket. Okay. I'd like to direct your attention to stain 19C, which is above the elbow on the left side of the jacket. Okay, do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you put on this diagram the measurements of 2 millimeters as taken from Mr. Renteria's work, field notes?
Yes.
And if I just hold on for 1 second. That was a 2 millimeter stain?
Well, yeah, a 2 millimeter, that is along one dimension. I don't know if they measured, if it was slightly elongated. I don't know if they measured the length or the width in that particular case.
And when you looked at it, is it important to try to measure length or width or both?
Well, if a stain is somewhat circular, generally, a single diameter is sufficient. But it's a call of the analyst, basically,
Okay.
and what they're comfortable with.
And that leads me to my next question. There's been some discussion about, at one point, do you measure stains when you're in the blood stain pattern analysis community? Do you measure them in the air, or do you measure them?
Yeah, last night I saw that people were just like, because there's a lot of heavy flooding in our area, and people are just like letting their dogs, instead of bringing them inside, letting them off the leash outside. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
They hit the target for your interpretations.
Well, you can't, I don't know of any way in the forensic science business, I don't know about other, science areas, but
It'll be all right,
you
Dan.
can't, we don't have the capability
do
of
something today,
measuring
too.
a droplet in air as to what its diameter is. We have to deal with the resultant stain, and that's what all our studies are based on, not the size of the spatter droplet in air, but rather the end product of the
That's
stain on the surface that it lands.
Okay. And so that when, even if stains may be smaller
Jen, have a
traveling
good
through the
one,
air,
man.
you make your
Thanks for coming in here
analysis
this
on the
morning. Stay
final
safe.
dimensions when they hit.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, there's no other way that we can do it.
So, and you don't know of any other analyst that would somehow try to retrograde, extrapolate a size in midair, and then do analysis?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Now, we discussed the stain, we were discussing 19C. We have a 19C close-up, Jen? F10, Your Honor?
Yes.
F10? Okay, and is this what you meant by the fact that it's got a longer shape than wide?
Yeah, that's what I mean. And besides, that stain is somewhat irregular, so I'm not sure if it was taken across at what particular angle, but it was measured to be 2 millimeters.
Okay, and 2 millimeters, again, would not be a sub-millimeter spatter, correct?
No.
And then if we can go back to the main view of the jacket again, Jennifer, that would be V9. Okay, and there's one more stain that was tested for DNA on the left side of the jacket, that's 19E on the bottom. There we go. I'd like to focus your attention now on 19E. Now, this stain was tested for DNA?
Yes, according to the reports.
Okay, and if we have a little better picture of that area down there, can we go to picture 19E, Jennifer? Okay. 19E. And I think I'll be a G to the 10th?
Yes.
Do you have the 19E picture? Your Honor, I have to use the Elmo on this one also.
All right. Is that?
Yes, that's it, she's got it. You got it. Back one, Jen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Kathy coming on back through again for Pumpkin Will Spot. There we go, Kathy. 420 coming through here. Let's go. Kathy, appreciate that. Get you on here. I think we're 3 away now. And let me get Pumpkin on here. Pumpkin finally did win an actual shirt, too, which freaking rules. But let's get Pumpkin a keychain. How about that? 3 away, folks, as we continue to plow along this morning on Murder Church. Thank y'all so much for hanging a
All right,
bang.
let me just talk about this for a second. The 19E, the DNA, that's a 1 millimeter spatter, correct?
Hanging and banging,
Yes,
brother.
Right?
that's how it was measured.
Okay, and
yes.
again, that would not be characterized as a sub-millimeter spatter, correct?
No, sub-millimeter by its definition is less than a millimeter.
Okay. And the 3 alleged stains around there, if we can go back to the whole picture, Jennifer, 27, 28, 29. They were not tested for DNA to even see whether they were blood, correct?
Well, they weren't tested for DNA, that's correct.
Okay. And then one other stain that we'd like to talk about on the front of the jacket that was measured by Mr. Renteria. And if we can go back to the view of the jacket on B9. Okay. In the middle, near the left breastbone, stain 16. I'd like to talk about that for the moment. Okay, you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and that was also measured as being 1 millimeter in diameter?
Yeah, some
Yes.
kind of,
Okay.
I guess it's a sub pump. I don't know. You put the hose in and the hose
Again,
goes
that
out
would
and you
not be
start
the
this some bitch
sub-millimeter
up and it
particles
makes a
that we were
loud
speaking of earlier.
Correct.
shooting water out.
And 1 millimeter and 2 millimeter particles are fairly larger particles in the bloodstain spatter community, correct?
Well, I wouldn't characterize them as large, but in terms of spatter, they're...
Get in here and hit that
You know,
thing.
spatter in general goes from, sub-millimeter, 1/100ths of a millimeter in diameter,
Anyone
up
else
to
heard
about
Beardy
3.
Sanders
So,
with this
it's in the middle to high
smoke
range
crazy?
of spatter size.
Okay. And middle to high range, did you say?
Sorry?
Middle to high range, did you say?
Yeah, if we take, hundreds of millimeter size up to 1/10 to 2/10 to 3/10, the 2 to 3 becomes sort of the middle to upper range.
Okay. And spatter that's 5/10 of a millimeter or less, what would that be?
It's sub-millimeter, basically. There aren't too many of us in bloodstain pattern analysis that go to the extent, to do this discrete type of measurement. We call it impact spatter if the overall size range is within that category. So,
Well, that's what I wanted you to explain to the jury, that usually you don't go down to little sizes anymore. You decide whether it's impact spatter or not impact spatter, correct?
right, you look at the overall pattern and you take measurements of the smallest ones perhaps, and then the largest ones, and then you can safely state that the overall pattern is in a range of, let's say, 0.2 of a millimeter up to 2 millimeters.
And in any event, a transfer stain is not a stain that you get from an initial spattering event such as gunshot, correct?
Correct.
And did you see
Hose up in that
what has
crib.
been called anything like misting on this jacket?
Not that I would classify as misting, no.
Did you see anything that you classify as misting on the right or the left sleeves of this jacket?
Not that I would categorize as misting, no.
Okay. Does this jacket on its right or left sleeve have the necessary distribution or location of spatter to support the jacket being in the position
Hey, Kathy, I just got that
up
message
to
also.
somebody's mouth?
No, the
the
bloodstain
shirt from
evidence
Pump.
in this case on that jacket does not allow that conclusion to be drawn.
And does it support on the left side of the cuff the position
And that was
of
actually on my notes.
somebody
Sweet,
putting
you
their
got me.
hand up to somebody's mouth and shooting
Hell
a
yeah.
gun?
And has anybody
No, my
ever
answer
seen
would be the
Jerry?
same.
If you
It
see
does
Jerry
not
again, let me
support
know.
that
I got to get
conclusion
some
at
info
all.
from Jerry.
Just a quick summary of what we discussed then. You cannot place the decedent's head to the right or to the left based on the spatter from the evidence that you looked at, correct?
Your Honor, I just want to object that this is a summary. It's
I agree.
unnecessary.
It's been asked and answered.
Okay. And then one final question. Is there any scientific evidence in the blood spatter area to support these two
I don't think I
sleeves
did.
being up to somebody's mouth and shooting a gun?
No, the bloodstain
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my.
scientific, the
I ate
bloodstain
so much
evidence
weird
is
crap
not there.
yesterday. My stomach's still a little weird.
We're
I
left
got
with
something
that.
with that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm good through the week, and then on
Thank you,
Saturday.
cross-examination.
get
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to pick up on that last point, your last answer to Ms. Kinney-Bodden's last question was,
Oh,
the
we
bloodstain
finally got some
evidence is
cross,
simply not
Ajax.
there. You're saying that you can't draw a conclusion by what's not there. You're not saying that, in fact, that jacket was not in the vicinity of the gunshot.
I'm just saying that my same answer, that the bloodstain evidence does not permit that conclusion. Absence of evidence is another issue, but I could only provide you with data from bloodstains that are there.
Okay, and of course, your answer to that question, Mr. James, was limited to Mrs. Kinney-Bodden's question about what was on the cuffs or the sleeves, correct?
Yes, we're talking about the blood on the cuffs does not support that conclusion.
Okay, of course, there is no way to approximate exactly where, in a crime scene environment, where blood is going to fly or not fly. I mean, that is an approximation as sophisticated as we are right now in 2007, or even back in 2004. You cannot recreate the exact flow of each particulate matter of blood droplets through the air, correct?
Well, of course not. I
Okay.
mean, it's a random event. Every case is different.
But that's, you know what, that's an incredibly eloquent way of saying it. It's a random event. In other words, although you can recreate certain blood spattering or bloodletting events, shooting through sponges, covering the sponge with clothing, even shooting some animals, I guess, as distasteful as that might be, that will not, each one of those cases, even experimentally, will result in a random distribution of blood to a certain degree. In other words, the droplets cannot be approximated to the millimeter, correct? Where they're going to land and where they're going to go.
Right. I mean, you have issues even in experimentation as to the volume of blood that you're applying to the sponge.
Sure.
And how accurate is your shooting through the sponge. I've had students, shoot through a bloody sponge and somehow manage to miss the blood on it. And so they get no spatter. What's wrong here, Well,
Right.
Try aiming a little better, that sort of thing.
So in other words, I think the long and short of what you're saying is a criminalist,
God, seems
someone
pleasant.
who's studied in this particular science.
Let me just show you my book real
science,
quick where
has to take
I
each
make note of
case
that,
and the
sir.
fact pattern that's laid before him or her in each case into consideration when attempting either a reconstruction or coming to any conclusion about a particular event, correct?
In general, yes.
Okay. Give me just a quick second, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. James. Let me get my notes together. By the way, while I'm thinking about this, as I review a couple of things, I might jump around a little bit, and I apologize. The term misting, you said you would not qualify what you found on the jacket or what you examined on the jacket to be a misting pattern, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that is a terminology difference that you have with some other folks in the field. In other words, what you might call misting, somebody else might call aerosol type, somebody else might call high velocity spatter, somebody else might call impact spatter, correct?
Yes, in fact, I think in the Kish Sutton James book, which we've been referring to, the latest bloodstain book, I think in fact we do say mist-like or aerosol. I mean, it's a common term. The problem is, as you're pointing out correctly, is that there's a disparity in terminology, and that's one reason that, I happen to get chosen to be put on the terminology committee of Swigstein with 5 other people, including Paulette Sutton, to get this, kind of worked out. And that's one of our endeavors in Swigstein.
Sure, and we hope you get there. I guess the point when you rolled your eyes.
Well, it's been 4 years we've been trying. We're not there yet.
All right.
We will get there.
Fair enough. One of the important things for a criminalist to do, for any forensic scientist to do, to make sure that we don't have a disparity among terminologies, for instance, is to go ahead and document, photograph, and write down the particular characteristics of a stain that's observed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that way, if it's documented and the evidence is preserved and then it's photographed on top of being preserved and documented, it gives other people, other forensic scientists and folks in the community an opportunity to go back and apply whatever terminology they think is appropriate, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so for instance, if one analyst were to call what was on the jacket, in his or her opinion, a misting pattern, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, so long as everybody agrees that this is the jacket or this is the slip dress, and here's the evidence that's on it. I mean, we can call it potatoes or potatoes, I suppose, and as long as the evidence is there, it is what it is, sort of, correct?
Well, the only problem with that statement is that misting in itself, when people say misting, they automatically are referring to it as gunshot spatter.
Okay.
When I hear misting, I think something totally different.
So that's why,
Being a pro wrestling fan.
currently we're trying to get away from that and say impact
If you
spatter.
know.
In a certain category, whether it be impact spatter or expiratory blood or satellite spatter or beating spatter. We make it more case-driven.
Okay.
Because misting, everyone says, oh boy, gunshot. And if
Do they?
the stains are not
Oh, boy, a
truly
gunshot.
what I consider a misting size, then you may not be dealing with gunshot at all.
Sure, but I guess what I'm getting at, Mr. James, is that the terminology applied in no way hindered your ability to review the evidence on your own independently, correct?
Oh, no, the only hindrance we had, and I think I brought it to the jury's attention and everybody here, is that the photographs of some of the items were better than the actual items because of the time lapse and the removal of stains.
Sure.
So the documentation was fine.
All right, good. Very briefly, Mrs. Kinney-Bodden asked you about an experiment that I think one of your professors actually conducted, dealing with a propeller device, very quickly spinning fan or propeller blade, wherein a pipette was used to drop some blood into it. That propeller blade then came in contact with the blood, the human blood. The blood was sent a particular direction, and then some measurements were made about that, correct?
Yes, that's what was the infernal machine. Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. In no way, and several photographs were shown, I think it was defense H to the 9th and I to the 9th, were shown showing spatter that was 6 inches away and then spatter that was a foot away.
I know.
That was in no way, Mr. James,
Slouched down
an
so
attempt
low.
by you to approximate for this jury what they should expect to see if they were looking at back spatter, for instance, from an intraoral gunshot, correct?
Correct, but I just want to correct you. We use 1 foot and 6 foot, not 6 inches and 1. Just
That's my mistake. I knew that as
so
I
their
said.
notes will get confused on that.
Sorry about that. That was my fault.
No, it's a minor point, I guess, but at any rate, no. This was only to demonstrate how far droplet sizes can go.
Yeah, I'm
And
reading, we're having like a
to
lot of
show
water rescues that's
students that
happening locally.
the larger droplets will travel further, and especially
Me and
with
Dan had a water rescue when we were kids with our mom.
a horizontal force that
And a
they will
boat.
go a considerable distance.
And of course, that horizontal force was a fan blade spinning.
Yeah, we're not trying, I think I mentioned to the jury that we're not trying to replicate the gunshot backspatter at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that, other than just kind of the example of showing how folks are taught this particular science or this type of science, that had no relevance to a particular backspatter event that you're testifying about.
No, only to show the relevance of gravity and air resistance affecting, how far droplets will go, and then the force, of course, being more than just those two, having the horizontal force as well.
All right. And that horizontal force in that particular experiment, because we're dealing with a fan blade, also included the movement of some air, columnized air, if you will.
Well, to a certain extent. I mean, actually, it was a side of the fan that, it was a side of the blades that were going out. The main force of the fan was actually, going forward.
Sure.
But not with the blood.
And at the end of the day, the students were taught through that experiment, and the professor succeeded in showing that larger droplets with larger mass can travel through air further than smaller droplets with smaller mass.
Yes, and that experiment, it was actually a demonstration. We all didn't do it individually.
Okay.
But that was the point of it all.
Okay. You indicated that, I think in answering one of Mrs. Kinney-Bodden's questions about that particular demonstration, if you will, that there is a wide variation of distances that is seen through years of experience, like with someone like yourself, with some law enforcement experience and being a forensic scientist yourself, a wide variation of distances that you see that you see blood droplets traveling at a particular crime scene, correct?
There's quite a variation, overall, and also, if I believe we're just talking about gunshot cases, but
Sure, yes.
certainly beatings and some other events can produce some pretty, dramatic distances.
You've seen distances, for instance, that are limited. I mean, you might walk in a particular crime scene and realize what the facts are. They involve a gunshot wound, and yet there's no backspatter. I mean, that's not uncommon, correct?
No, backspatter is probably more than people realize is not present. The factors, I'm sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
To elaborate just a bit, the factors are the location of the wound. For example, head wounds are more likely to produce backspatter, especially if they're close range, the size of the caliber of the weapon, the presence of hair or other intermediate objects, clothing. McDonald always made a case of the guy wearing the hat, and the spatter was on the inside of the hat and not elsewhere.
Right.
Those are all examples of ways that it can be diminished.
Sure. So there are circumstances that a forensic scientist has to take into consideration in each individual case before assigning significance to the existence or non-existence of backspatter and blood spatter in general, correct?
Yes.
For instance, like you said, use your example, shooting into someone's head, for instance, a head wound. If there's a significant amount of hair, that might impede backspatter from even going past the hairline, correct?
Right, it may be entirely absent due to that factor.
Okay, so if someone's wearing a hat, like you said, it may just be confined to the area of the hat because that's sort of a closed environment, correct?
Yes.
All right, if someone's wearing clothing and it's a...
Michelle, you have a good day
It's okay.
too. Thank you.
If someone's wearing clothing and a suit,
I
I'm wearing
appreciate that.
several layers with the jacket, the tie, the shirt, the t-shirt, etc. A wound that I suffered to the chest might very well, as a matter of fact, you'd probably expect it to be somewhat confined, the backspatter, if it exists at all, to be confined under my clothes, for instance.
Yes, well, frankly, in the absence of a shotgun wound, backspatter in chest wounds is very rarely seen.
Okay. So more times than not, in gunshot events, back spatter is not seen, it's not prevalent rather than the alternative, correct?
That's been my experience and others in, researching this issue, yes.
So certainly it goes, it's kind of a logical extension of that when you go to a crime scene, if there is back spatter, you have to take that spatter pattern for what it is and not try to unduly expound on it and find and ask, what isn't there, for instance? What would we expect to find? You take it as it comes to you, correct?
Well, you take the evidence at the scene as it comes. I mean, as far as what you expect to see, it depends on the totality of the scene. Okay, if there is spatter produced, then you might want to travel into what I would expect to see, or an analyst would expect to see. But generally speaking, we don't like to opine about bloodstains that aren't there, if you see what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's pretty well covered in our book as well.
Sure, and as a matter of fact, one of the quotes that you use is something that we've heard in here several times: the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, for instance.
Yeah, it depends how you use that particular statement, but it's got a lot of applicability. That's one that Paul Kish wrote with Herb McDonald, and was actually a letter to the editor, I believe. And
looking at
I think the
my message
Journal
or
of,
some comments on YouTube.
Identification.
That's the
several
page.
years ago.
The number 57 of this is not in the playlist, so let me fix that. Just forgot to put that guy in there. Look at him. He's taking a full nap next to
I
Cutler
apologize
over
again.
here.
I'm trying to go in some order so that we can kind of walk through this logically. A couple of points that Mrs. Kinney-Bodden made I'd like to touch upon. She brought up the idea of, or actually she asked you about it and you brought it up, the idea of satellite spatter, and I'd like to visit with you for a second about that. Satellite spatter is different than back spatter insofar as the mechanism that causes it.
Oh, yeah, put it in the Idaho.
Yes, it's
Weird.
a different mechanism that can
Should be in there
produce small stains.
Okay. Back spatter, as we've all learned through the course of this trial, is a product of a gunshot. And let's talk about gunshots. It's a product of a gunshot wound where the spatter actually goes the opposite direction of the trajectory of the bullet. Correct?
Yeah, we're talking about gunshots.
Yes, talking about gunshots only. We'll limit our discussion to that for right now. Conversely, satellite spatter is something, if I understand you correctly and I looked at your diagram correctly, it's something where if I have a bleeding hand and I'm dripping onto this table, the satellite spatter that you're talking about would be the result of blood dripping into either on the surface itself, say one drop onto a clean surface and then spattering out, or blood dripping into blood consistently. As the blood pools, more blood keeps dripping into it, and it creates little splashes, if you will, correct?
Well, I don't call them splashes. It's actually, spattered blood. Yes.
Okay, and what I meant by that was the... Oh, there you've got it. You do have it. Let's see if I can recall which... I believe this was M to the 9th.
I only list them. I don't list them by what they are. Just M to the 9th is a diagram. I can tell you that.
That would be.
That's it. Okay. I don't further describe it in my notes.
Okay. I think. Does that look like the same diagram?
It is. It's from the same book.
Okay.
Yes.
And I didn't mean to insult your intelligence by calling it
What?
splashing. I just don't know anything.
No, a splash of blood involves a larger volume.
Okay.
That's all.
So this small spattering event, there are certain physical properties to this type of satellite spatter, I assume, correct?
Physical properties?
Physical properties or physical laws that govern it. In other words, for instance, something I think I've learned through the course of studying this stuff is that the vertical height of any spattered blood from a satellite spatter will never exceed or even reach the height of the source of blood to where the spattering event takes place. That's a mouthful, but I think I got that right. Is that correct?
I think generally speaking, only in that if you're dripping blood into blood at a height of about 6 inches,
Yes.
you won't get any satellite spatter. And the reason for that is that the droplets of blood that are falling need to reach a higher a higher velocity in order to spatter. So at 6 inches down, there isn't enough time nor distance for that to occur. In fact, you can do that. You can just take a pipette of blood and squeeze it one drop at a time, 6 inches above any surface, basically.
Right.
And you'll just see the pool accumulate with nothing around it.
Okay, so in other words...
So it's got to be a higher level in that regard, yes.
And I guess from a physics standpoint, it's because there hasn't been enough time to reach the energy level required to actually break that puddle into smaller droplets like we see from the diagram.
Yes, and I think conversely, also, I should say, although I don't think 6 inches would be the minimum, dropping blood on a rough surface would probably break the surface tension even at that distance, give you some spatter.
Okay. My first question was, and thank you for the explanation. My first question is, let's take it higher than 6 inches, and let's say it's 6 feet. We're dropping blood into blood at 6 feet. The point is, the spatter that you get from that blood into blood mechanism is not going to splash or spatter back up 6 feet, correct?
No. Well, first of all, your vertical perspective would probably be limited to about 12 inches.
Okay, that was my question.
That was, I think Paul Kish did some research on that and presented a paper at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences,
Right.
which I think we've mentioned in the book.
Okay.
All right. But the horizontal perspective is probably it is much wider. It's probably, if you took a diameter of, with the parent stain being in the center, it'd probably be about 3 feet wide, because we use large cardboard. I'm sorry. We use large cardboards for that. So,
Mike,
yeah.
sir.
So the point is, if you're dropping blood into blood, about the most you're going to get, if it's on the ground, for instance, is maybe a spatter that's 12 inches or so off the ground.
I think that's about the maximum that Mr. Kish had done in his research.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to have to chill out a little bit. What's going to be
Kinney Bodden was asking you about satellite spatter in this
Something not
particular
heavy today.
case. And I think she asked you about, or she put up a diagram. It wasn't a diagram, it was actually a photo.
Get back on that diet heavy.
I may have missed this number.
After a shitty day
So,
yesterday.
no, I didn't.
I'm calling it a cheat day. Oh, great.
Sudi, do you have Q to the 9th and Y to the 9th available, maybe? Your Honor, if you'll give me just a quick second.
Of course.
Look at old Phil. He's like, I'm just going to take a nap, everybody. Everybody cool with that? Cutler's like, yeah, snuggle on up here next to me, boss. Get in here. I'll take one with you. Shit, they're both. He's passing out harder than Phil. Jesus. They just start making out.
I apologize, Your Honor. I'm trying to keep us from remarking things that have already been marked.
Okay.
Let's start with this diagram, and then we'll move on while Ms. Sahab looks for the other two diagrams. Take a look toward the left, actually. I'm not concerned with the right-hand photograph B on People's 103 at this time. I'm more concerned with what's in the left photograph, and specifically on the right arm of the chair. And when we say right and left of the chair, can we agree, Mr. James, that we're talking about as you're sitting in the chair, the right is to your right hand and the left is to your left?
Yes, we always have to do that, especially when you're talking about a victim lying in bed.
Sure.
Which is, are you looking at the bed, or are you doing it from the person's perspective on the bed? Right.
Yes.
Fine.
Okay, so if we agree that what we're looking at, which is to the far left of the photograph, is actually the right arm of the chair, can you take a look at that area? Right there. And tell me, is that the area that you were talking about when you said there was a parent stain and what you said could be satellite spatter from that parent stain?
Yes, it's on the upholstery of the arm of that right side.
Okay, about where my green laser pointer is right now?
Yeah, roughly in there, yes.
Okay. Birthday present. Let's take a look at, I think it's, is that Q or Y to the 9th, Sudi? Let's put it up and take a shot. I believe, and Jen, maybe you can tell me if I'm getting this wrong, I think that's Q to the 9th? Thank you. Take a look at what's been previously marked as Q to the 9th and tell me, is that a closer view of that parent stain and then some of the smaller stains surrounding that as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so on this chair, so that we're all oriented, as I'm saying, can you see where you are?
Yes, I can.
I don't know if the jurors can see, but on this chair, if this represents the arm, that stain would be toward the inside of the right arm of the cushion of the chair, correct?
Well, it extends from about, looks from this photograph from about the center over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look back at People's 103 one more time to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. You can't sanction that, kid. No, don't go to trouble. That's the stain there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and if you look at it from this perspective, which is basically straight on the chair, I see what your point is. You're saying that there's some staining toward the center midline of the arm, and that it droops over toward the inside of the chair, correct?
Yes, that's what it appears to do.
Okay, so basically it might be from midline toward the inside, certainly favoring the interior of the chair rather than the exterior of the chair.
Yes.
Okay. Is that the parent and satellite spatter that you are suggesting, or let me ask it a different way, Mr. James, it's far easier. Are you suggesting, or is it your testimony, that it's that staining that was the mechanism for the pattern of blood that you saw on the left breast and other areas of Mr. Spector's white jacket?
I'm saying it was an alternative mechanism, and Mr. Kish and I talked about that a lot in preparation of this report that we actually submitted, and that we simply couldn't rule it out, and we weren't ruling out impact spatter, by doing that.
Okay, you were not ruling out impact spatter.
Right, it was another mechanism to be considered as a post-injury type of activity that can account for small spatters of blood.
Okay. Can we take a look at People's 61? I'm going to ask you to take a look at a couple of photographs. People's, what's been previously marked as People's 61. And I'll ask you a couple of questions about those.
I missed it if they did. That would be amazing to hear.
This is what's been previously marked as People 61, and it may be a little bit difficult to see, Mr. James. I want to direct your attention first to the area where Ms. Clarkson appears to be in the chair.
Watching something stupid.
She's slumped sort of backward. Her head is to the left in this photograph, and her right arm toward the armpit area is draped over the right cushion of the armrest of the chair. Do you see that area?
I do.
Do you also see in photograph E in that same exhibit the area of the chair that we've been talking about, where the strap of the purse, the interior appears draped over that the armchair?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that in your opinion, having reviewed these photographs, that Ms. Clarkson's head appeared to have been moved from the right, where most of the bleeding occurred, at the scene toward the left, correct?
Yeah, the left is the final position, but there was significant bleeding with her head turned to the right.
Okay. I want you, Mr. James, for the purposes of these questions, or my next couple of questions, to put in your mind Ms. Clarkson's head back on her right side toward the right shoulder. Assuming what you saw, well, taking into consideration what you saw as the flow of blood down the right shoulder, onto the arm, down to the purse, and onto the strap of the purse, and then down into the purse, filling the purse, beneath the purse, dripping into the carpet. Right? That basically describes the general flow that you saw based on all the photographs that you reviewed. Correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think that's controverted at all.
Okay. Taking that into consideration, what is your conclusion, or do you have a conclusion, Mr. James, about where that stain emanated from, the stain toward the inside of the right armrest, if you will. I keep struggling with that word. I know there's a word for it. The inside of that armrest, where was the source of that blood, if in fact there was apparent stain where something was dripping into it?
Well, dripping into it is the usual way that occurs. But in a situation like this, you've got significant bleeding on the right side. Blood is flowing down, and that flow on its own can create satellite spatter. So it's blood coming from the nose and mouth area, coming down the right side of the body, that has created that.
Okay, so you will agree with me that the most consistent, the most reasonable explanation for the blood on this inside portion of the armrest, of the right armrest, is the flow from her face down onto her shoulder, onto her arm and jacket, down onto the strap of the purse, flowing onto that armrest, and then on down wherever it went from there.
Yes, and you can even see individual drops on the side of the, if you look back at that other photo, you can see a nice passive stain that's right on the inside edge of that as well. So
okay.
That's pretty much what I think. Yes.
Sure. That having been said, Mr. James, there is no mechanism in that scenario. There's nothing, in other words, at a height of 6 inches or higher, blood dripping into blood onto that armrest, correct?
No, we didn't imply that.
Okay, that's not what you were suggesting.
No.
Okay, you're simply suggesting there was a blood flow there, correct?
There was a blood flow associated with the production of that satellite spatter. We're not saying that someone or an object was dripping blood directly above that. You know, our feeling is that it came from the blood flow on that side of the body.
Okay, explain that. I'm maybe a little bit dense on this issue, so I want you to explain how blood flow, if you just explain how satellite spatter requires a height of 6 inches or higher, blood dripping to create the energy, basically to create the satellite spatter. Can I have Okay, let me restart my question again. I'm not sure I'm following your explanation, Mr. James. If in fact the explanation for satellite spatter is that blood needs to gain enough energy in the air, dropping down and dripping into other blood or onto a surface to create this spatter, how is it that flowing blood, simply flowing from the shoulder down to the strap and onto the armchair, will create that same type of spatter?
Well, this is the best example of showing satellite spatter. However, and we've seen this in other cases, that rapidly flowing blood coming down, on the surface of the body, maybe it's best described as more of a turbulent effect, but you're still getting satellite spatter. You can get satellite spatter from projected blood, large volumes as well. There's different mechanisms. All satellite spatter is an accumulation of bloodstains around the parent area. That's the best example to use, but for lack of a better term, the turbulence of blood flowing down, it's almost like not exactly like wind blowing, on an ocean wave, but you can get turbulence from the blood flow that's going to cause a few spatters to fall off.
But of course, if Ms. Clarkson was bleeding and the flow of blood was dictated rather than by something propelling it, but rather just by gravity, that would certainly suggest a slower, smoother flow of blood down the shoulders, or it could suggest that.
I'm not talking about a propelled flow at that point, and maybe you misunderstood me. I've actually seen, videotapes, not to be shown here, but of individual, actually it wasn't an intraoral gunshot wound. It was on television about 15 years ago, involving a politician or a comptroller that killed himself at a news conference, of all things. But anyway, that blood came out very rapidly, okay?
Right.
And it was due to his final bleeding episode. It had nothing to do with wind or anything else like that, but it was just the rapid reduction of blood pressure coming out of his mouth. So that's the kind of thing I'm referring to.
And in your book, whereas you have an example to show us for blood dripping into blood, this is a Did you draw this, by the way?
No, that was done by an associate of mine from Malta, as a matter of fact.
Very nice.
He's an architect.
Nicely, I tried to explain that with my
Many of
beginning.
many of the diagrams in the book are the result of his work, and nice contribution.
All right. Did you include in your book any diagram of the flowing mechanism creating satellite
Somebody's
spatter,
got to get this book.
like this? that you just
I don't
described?
believe we did, no.
Okay.
We may not have had a decent photograph of it or something, but
All right. Now that having been said, let's go back to the chair. That having been explained, the other explanation for that spatter on the chair in this area, toward the inside of the chair, thank you, Sudi, toward the inside of the chair, for instance, there, and there. What I've just done, Your Honor, is defense, I want to say that's Q to the 9th. I've just indicated toward the left side of the picture several small stains that appear to be blood stains on the arm of the chair. Those are also consistent with Mr. James' spatter from the actual impact, or impact spatter from the actual gunshot, I should say.
yes, they're in the size range, but I'm not eliminating satellite spatter for their production, and I think that's pretty clear in the report.
Sure, and conversely, I'm going to ask you to say that the opposite way.
Sure.
You're certainly not eliminating that could be impact spatter from the gunshot wound itself.
No.
Okay. I want to talk real quick about the position of Ms. Clarkson at the time she was shot. You indicated that under questioning by Mrs. Kinney Bodden that you were not comfortable saying that there was a particular position of Ms. Clarkson's head at the time that the gunshot was inflicted, correct?
Yes, not based upon any type of analysis of the stains on the slip. I just don't think it can be done precisely.
Okay.
And I think I left it at, we know for a fact the initial bleeding occurred when her head was to the right.
Okay.
Yo,
You
Drew,
actually
thanks for hanging
indicated in
today.
your report that certain observations that you made about how she was situated in the chair and
rock
the blood
bowl
evidence
of,
that was on the chair and the slip and the
Frosted
purse and the dress
All
and
three had
her
Frosted
jacket,
Flakes.
et cetera,
They were
correct?
delicious.
Yes.
You also, well, let me ask it this way. You can eliminate a couple of things, I'm assuming,
Get a
from
hair
your
change.
review of the evidence. For instance, you can eliminate that her head was turned
Wig change.
90 degrees to her left and looking over her left shoulder when she was shot. I'm assuming you can eliminate that reasonably.
I think that's reasonable, yes.
Okay. You could probably also eliminate that her head was turned 90 degrees to her right and looking straight over her right shoulder when she was
35 minutes
shot.
left.
Yes, that's also
guy.
reasonable.
Okay. What you're saying is you can't tell us or tell the jurors that she was looking directly
Crazy how, like,
forward
in depth
or
you can
10
get
degrees to the
interested
right
in some
or
of the witnesses and
30
others,
degrees
they
to the
just,
right. That's the precision with which
Just
you
the way
say
they
you're
talk, or I don't know.
correct?
Yeah, I just don't think you can do it based
Pulling
on the
teeth.
surface upon which the bloodstains are that you would use for that determination.
Okay. In your report, you did indicate that bloodstains were present on the right arm of the chair, correct?
Yes.
The right chest region of her blazer, correct?
Yes.
The purse, correct?
Yes.
And the purse was on which side?
Purse was on the right side.
You indicated that there was blood on the arm, the arm of the chair itself, correct?
Correct.
Which arm of the chair, Mr. James?
The right.
You indicated that there was blood and some spatter possibly on the armchair, the arm support, if you will, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
And which arm support?
The right. Yeah.
And you indicated that there was spatter that you saw on the cushion as well, the cushion area of the chair, correct?
Yes.
Which side, the left or the right?
Well, there is virtually little, if any, blood on the left side, so we're talking about the right side of the chair.
So once again, the right side.
Yes.
All right. So basically, all of the blood that you encountered during the course of your investigation and looking at all the evidence was toward, if you place the midline at Lana Clarkson's nose, it was sort of, including some on the midline, sort of to the right of center, correct?
Yes.
All right. So as a criminalist, if one was asked, in your professional opinion, could you render a conclusion based on all of the totality of the evidence there and the totality of the pattern that was seen as to whether Ms. Clarkson's head was situated more toward the right than the left? Would you be comfortable saying, yes, based on the totality of the evidence, it would be reasonable to conclude that it was more toward the right than the left?
Yes, because there's an absence of blood on the left chair, side of the chair. I agree with that, and I think Lynn Harrell was correct in that evaluation.
Okay.
However, to get any more precise, I would probably just stick with the fact that we know the initial bleeding occurred with her head to the right.
Sure.
Without knowing whether it was 10 degrees over
Right.
or what have you, up to 45, I suppose, or 90.
Sure.
Yeah.
But may I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Very briefly. You indicated, I won't invade your space.
That's fine.
Certainly, if Dr. Harold suggested, under questioning by myself and cross-examination, that in her expert opinion, the head would have been more to the right of center, you wouldn't necessarily have any, quarrel with that opinion.
Only to the extent that I don't agree with the fact that she used the stains on the slip to make that determination.
What if she used the totality of the circumstances of all of the blood pattern that she saw at the crime scene? That would be more appropriate.
Not exactly what totality you're talking about.
The slip, the chair, the stuff that we've just talked about, the blood stains on the right arm, the blood stains on the right support, the blood stains on the right cushion, the absence of blood stains on the left cushion, the blood stains toward the right chest area of the slip dress, the blood stains on the purse, and the fact that the head fell to the right. All of that stuff taken together. If that was presented to you, you would probably feel comfortable saying, well, based on all of that, the head was probably to the right of center at the time of at the infliction of the gunshot.
Not necessarily.
Didn't you say, well, as a matter of fact, you reached some conclusions in your report, correct?
Yes.
All right. In your conclusions, did you say that the blood stain patterns on Lana Clarkson are consistent with her head being turned to her right while bleeding
Yes.
down over her right side of her body, purse, and the
Correct.
chair? Okay. You also went on to say that Lana Clarkson's head was subsequently moved from leaning right to leaning left, correct?
Correct.
Finally ending up in the position depicted by the scene photographs, correct?
Correct.
Then you indicated in your second conclusion, there is no indication that Lana Clarkson was in any other location than on the chair during and or after her gunshot wound occurred. So in other words, she was found, or she bled with her head to the right, correct?
Correct.
The initial bleeding process was head to the right, correct?
Yes.
And she was found slumped in the chair with her legs extended, correct?
Yes.
Her head was behind the armrest of the right armrest of the chair. If we dissected the chair, for instance, it would be behind it.
Yes.
And you indicated in your second conclusion, there's no, and by the way, she was found initially, it was determined that her initial bleeding was all to the right, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
All right.
Bleeding, post-injury bleeding, yes.
That being said, you indicated there's no indication that she was in any other position than that at the time of the discharge of the weapon, correct?
Meaning in the chair. Yes.
Okay. So you weren't saying that her head was basically to the right or the right of center when you made that conclusion?
No.
All right.
We're talking about the shooting incident occurred while she was in the chair.
Okay.
And I don't think that's under dispute.
All right.
And the other thing was, the reason I didn't agree with the two statements ago or questions you asked me was that, Lynn Harrell didn't consider other mechanisms, and that's what's holding me back in drawing that conclusion, in addition to the nature of the surface on the slip.
Okay. We'll get to that in just a second. The other mechanism being the satellite spatter.
Correct.
All right.
Actually, we'll get to that in 15 minutes.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
We're going to take our recess. Keep in mind the admonition. 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Recess. We still got a minute here. Like 25 of them.
All parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness are present as heretofore. You may resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. James, with regard to satellite spatter, once again, we were talking about just a few minutes ago the effect of the energy that's required to break up a droplet into smaller droplets and create this satellite spatter. You had explained that to us, and you used the diagram under questioning by Mrs. Kinney-Bodden and under my questioning as well. Do you recall that?
Yes.
All right. With regard to that satellite spatter mechanism of, I guess, creating small droplets, you would expect if blood is dripping into blood and there is a static source of blood, it's not moving around. If I'm moving around, that satellite spatter is going to be different if my hand is cut and I'm moving around like this, correct?
Well, depending on the surface, you may not see any if it's individual drops.
Correct.
Depending on the surface.
Conversely, if I'm standing still and I cut my hand and I don't move and I'm static, and I'm dripping, 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 there's going to be a certain pattern that emerges from that satellite spatter, correct?
Yes.
And that dripping will continue, and that pattern will continue as long as that satellite spatter continues to create the energy required for those droplets to be broken up.
Well, no, the satellite spatter isn't creating the energy. It's the droplet you're talking about.
I may have misspoken or been inartful in my question. I guess my point is, as long as there is blood dripping into that blood, there is a particularized pattern that's being created, correct?
Yeah, you'll be able to recognize a pattern of satellite spatter.
All right.
Certainly.
And if, in fact, the source of blood is static, not moving, and where the satellite spatter is being created is static and not moving, there's going to be a consistency among the spattered droplets in location and distribution.
To a certain degree, yes, depending upon the curvature of the surface and all that.
Right. Let's assume that I'm dripping onto the jury box, and my hand is 8 inches or 10 inches high enough to create a spatter.
Right.
There's consistency with regard to that drop flowing that same distance into that same drop of blood, correct?
Yeah, theoretically, if the surface were wide enough, you'd see a pattern of satellite spatter encircling the parent stain.
All right.
I think there's a picture of that in the book, too, as a matter of fact.
And if I was standing next to that, for instance, you would expect that with each drop of satellite spatter, with each energy-producing mechanism, whatever it is, there's going to be a pattern that emerges on my coat, for instance, if I'm standing close to it.
Yes, that was the purpose of Mr. Kish's research.
Okay.
And he actually did it to show the problems that exist with satellite spatter getting on shoes and lower pant cuffs. You know,
All right.
A little different perspective, but the same idea.
Sure. So if I stand close in some way, and I stand close to that particular satellite spatter producing event, whatever that may be, there's going to be small droplets that emanate from that blood drop into blood drop, correct?
Yes.
All right. And if I stand close enough, I may get some satellite spatter on my jacket, correct?
He might, yes.
And if I don't move, or if I'm standing relatively still or relatively stationary in the same relative position, that set of droplets are going to be in basically the same area on my jacket, correct?
Pretty much, yes.
And distribution is one of the hallmarks of blood stain pattern analysis, correct?
It's along with size, shape, distribution, and location, yes.
And you indicated, as a matter of fact, that among those four things, that location may be the most important, correct?
It often is, yes.
All right. But distribution has to be considered along with location, size, and shape, correct?
Yes.
All right. A couple of things on those points, and then I think I can move on. First of all, with regard to size, Mrs. Kinney-Bodden asked you a lot of questions about the size of the staining on the jacket. For instance, she pointed out a couple of 2-millimeter sized droplets, correct?
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, my mistake. I'm using bad language. 2-millimeter sized stains.
Stains, not drops, yes.
Correct. The droplet, by necessity, is smaller than the stain is wide or long, correct?
Well, we don't know to what extent because we've never measured it.
Right. But I'm not asking you to give me a percentage. I'm just saying, by necessity, let's use something that Jim Peck's actually explained to us. If I take a ladle of pancake batter and I pour it out, the pancake is going to be larger in diameter than the sphere of pancake batter in the ladle.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
That's
you.
okay.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting comparison, which I don't know if that's entirely true or not, but it gives you the idea.
And the idea is that the orb or the sphere traveling through the droplet traveling through the air is smaller than the stain that is resultant from it coming in contact with a solid surface.
Yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily relate that to bloodstain pattern analysis because you're dealing, with a thick liquid going onto a frying pan type thing, whereas you may have small droplets of blood that are being driven into a fabric that may not change in size that much. So it depends on the fabric too, and the surface. Frying pan's one thing, but fabric's another.
I understand. But certainly, I mean, I don't want to get into the deep details of the physics. All I'm trying to get across is to see if you agree that the droplet moving through the air by necessity is smaller than the stain that it creates. Even if by a factor of very little, it has to be smaller.
That's logical.
Okay.
But I would like to see some data on that whenever they figure out a way to measure the droplet size in air.
But up until this point, there is no data, and the general industry, the forensic science community tends to agree that the droplet traveling through the air is smaller than the resultant stain that it leaves.
That's all I
on
could
the
think
fabric,
about.
If in fact there's a capillary effect and things
It's
like
fabric dependent, surface dependent, yes.
And of course, there was capillary effect on the white jacket, Mr. Spector's white
I'm
jacket.
impressed
that
by
had
Phil
blood on it,
today.
Correct.
He actually seemed
yes.
more alert than
And
normal.
as a matter of fact, in your notes that you drafted as a result of the evidence
This has been one of my least
examination
favorite
that you
witnesses just
conducted back
because
in May
of
of
its tone, though.
2006,
Like,
you indicated
it's hard
that
for me
many
to
of the stains were 1 millimeter and smaller,
with them.
sub-millimeter sized, correct?
Yes.
All right.
I couldn't imagine being a juror of this deep and then getting this
Mrs.
guy.
Kenny Bodden simply pointed out during her
For
direct
3
examination
hours.
a couple of the stains that
Maybe,
happened to
maybe
be
more.
larger than that.
Okay, I think this is it. Next
Correct.
was that
Yes,
detective.
well, there were ones that were measured by Renteria. See, the problem was, and I think I explained it already, we had some problems with examination of the stains because of some had been removed, so we had to rely upon work done by others before we actually got to the evidence.
Right.
So,
But you did indicate that many of the small stains measured 1 millimeter or less. As a matter of
yes,
fact,
to the best of our ability.
that's a direct quote from your notes,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly, yeah, I'm
All
not
right.
denying that.
All right. Distribution and location. I want to talk about distribution for just a second. You're aware of the distribution pattern that emerged on Mr. Spector's jacket, correct?
Yes,
The blood stains were predominantly on the left panel of the jacket. In other words, if we break my jacket into 2 panels, the right panel and the left panel, it was on the exterior of the left panel, correct?
yes.
That distribution appeared to be relatively evenly distributed between about the mid-breast area all the way down to beneath the buttons, closer to the hem or the seam, I guess it'd be the hem of the jacket, correct?
Relatively, yes.
All right. And confined somewhat to an area about the size of the left panel of the jacket. In other words, it didn't extend all the way out to the seam of the jacket, and it didn't extend to the right panel of the jacket either, correct?
Yes.
All right. What is your interpretation if you indicated that you believed that satellite spatter could be the let me start that question over again. You indicated on direct examination that one of the considerations you gave to the sub-millimeter and millimeter and maybe even larger particles on Mr. Spector's jacket was it could be the product of satellite spatter, correct?
Yes, to the extent that, some could be, we weren't saying it all was one or the other, but we felt that with the information we had on the chair, that we had to mention that in our report. That's
Sure.
another potential mechanism.
Absolutely. My question to you is, are you saying that the spatter pattern that emerged on Mr. Spector's jacket was the product of satellite spatter on the right arm of the chair, the entire spatter pattern?
No, it was an additional area that was spattered. It may have come some from that or some from, the blood coming down the right side of Lana Clarkson's jacket.
I guess I'm not following you.
Well, we talked about that earlier, that you can have some, projections of small droplets of blood coming off a rapidly bleeding area.
I understand that. That's not my question. My question is this. The pattern that emerged on Mr. Spector's jacket, it is what it is. There's spatter, 1 millimeter and sub-millimeter size spatter, and a couple of larger spatters, meaning 2 millimeter size spatters, on the left, predominantly the left panel of his jacket, and there's some indication that there may be some blood stains on the sleeves as well, including the back sleeve.
Yes.
What I'm asking you, Mr. James, is are you saying that the pattern on his jacket, taken in totality, is consistent with the spatter coming from the satellite spatter on the right arm of the chair?
No, we're saying that some of those stains could have been the result of satellite spatter, not all of them.
Okay, so...
The pattern is just too diffuse and too broad for it to all be satellite spatter.
All right, that was my question. Thank you. And you asked it, as is often the case, you're asking it much better, or you're answering it much better than I'm asking it. There is a particular pattern that emerged on his jacket, correct?
Yes.
You are not telling this jury, as you sit here, it is not your testimony that what emerged on his jacket is simply the product of blood dripping into blood or the flow that we talked about on that right armchair, on that right armrest.
No, what Paul and I meant to say, if it wasn't clear in our report, was that that was another mechanism that could be responsible for some of those stains.
Some of the stains could have come from blood dripping into blood, for instance.
Or that similar mechanism I mentioned, yes.
But the other stains came from what mechanism?
Well, you have only two other mechanisms left. One is impact spatter, and the other is, depending upon what the pathologist says about agonal breathing, on the far end you have expiratory blood. That depends on the pathologist.
Let's talk about the expiratory blood. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Expiratory?
Very good, yes.
Good enough. Blood that's expirated that has the energy to create a pattern consistent with impact spatter must be expirated under some force. Yes?
Well, even just a cough can do it.
Correct.
I've done that.
All right. So in other words, if I have some of the demonstrations that folks in your field do is have ketchup and water in their mouth, they'll take a board and cough on it, correct?
No, we use blood.
In the mouth?
I said that before, yes.
Wow.
We limit the blood to the person from whom it was taken.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. All right. That being said, the cough is what I'm getting at. A cough like that may create the force necessary to create these millimeter-sized particles, correct?
Yes.
All right. If the pathologist in this case who performed the autopsy indicated in his testimony that there was in fact no agonal breathing, or if there was any lung movement whatsoever, it was an extraordinarily shallow inhale, like I just did. Probably missed it.
Didn't hear it.
All right. Like so, using his example. If the pathologist indicated that she was immediately incapacitated, her spine was transected, and she was not able to move or breathe or expire blood through a cough or any force or anything like that whatsoever, could you eliminate that as a possible cause for the pattern that you saw in Mr. Spector's jacket?
Yes, that's why I put it when I said the far end,
Okay.
because if there's a difference of opinion that exists in whether a significant breath could or could not have been taken, then that's another issue. But based on what the pathologist determined at autopsy, Dr. Pena, and perhaps consulting with others, that there was no agonal breathing, well then that certainly would eliminate that particular mechanism.
Okay, and Mr. James, that leaves us to getting to the final point of this questioning. What does that leave you with insofar as a mechanism for the pattern that you saw emerge on Mr. Spector's jacket based on your examination of his jacket?
Well, it's certainly in the size range of impact spatter.
One of
Say the
things-
stains that are small, and we're not talking about the transfers.
Right, and you understand that Lynn Harold, when she put arrows on that jacket, that she was not just suggesting that all of that was impact spatter. You're aware of that, yes?
Well, I don't recall that, but I certainly confirmed that by looking at her photographs.
Right. In other words, she put arrows on every stain on the jacket, not just highlighting high-velocity backspatter.
Oh, I understand that, yes. I mean, it's pretty clear.
Right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there were arrows on the very clear, I mean, even I could figure that out, that there was transfer stains toward the buttons of his jacket inside and out.
Well, there's even one on the inside that didn't show up in that actual photograph,
Right.
but it was in the closer photo. You could tell it was on the inside of the lapel.
Right.
It was obviously a transfer.
Sure, and so I guess that point is you're aware that she was not suggesting that everything with an arrow was an impact. She's suggesting that everything with an arrow was a stain that she found.
Yes, and I recall, since I was here listening to her testimony,
Yes.
that I believe she indicated that she put arrows on most, if not all, stains.
All right.
So,
With regard to the impact spatter that you have, is it safe to say that you have concluded, in your opinion, that the overall pattern of blood on Mr. Spector's jacket, the impact stains, not the transfer stains, but the impact stains, the overall pattern that you saw on Mr. Spector's jacket is from the source of the gunshot wound?
I would say yes, for at least a portion of the stains, yes.
Thank you. Taking that into consideration, is it important, Mr. James, in reconstructing location, which you said is one of the most important factors to consider in a bloodstain pattern analyst's kind of repertoire, is it important to take into consideration all of the facts and circumstances surrounding the particular crime scene that you're investigating or examining?
I would say yes, certainly.
All right. You did review, or you were aware of others' reports concerning the search for blood at the crime scene, and blood that was actually found and not found at the crime scene, correct?
I am.
In other words, Steve Renteria's reports, you've read those.
I have.
Okay, you're familiar with the luminol issue, et cetera?
I am.
Okay. I want to ask you a couple of questions about that. You indicated that is, in fact, a search technique that's left for last resort normally, correct?
Yes, that's the procedural issue with most laboratories and crime scene units that I deal with or have dealt with in the past.
All right. You are aware that Steve Renteria actually did it as a last resort. I mean, that was kind of the last thing that he did the next day, and that wasn't the first thing that he did.
Well, but he also eliminated an important step of not removing the carpet early from the scene or putting down those platforms, those narrow-based platforms, so you're not contaminating that particular area. That was my main point about the luminol.
Right, I understand, and we'll get to that in just a second. That wasn't really my question. My question was, timing-wise, you're aware that he did that sort of last in the progression of things that he did.
That's right, yes.
Okay, and you're aware that he actually looked visually, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just asking you whether or not you're aware of how he conducted his examination. He looked visually on the carpet and on the adjacent west wall. You're aware of that?
Yes.
You're aware that he then illuminated those same areas with a flashlight and looked closely at those areas and closely at the wall, getting within, I think his testimony was within inches of the wall, looking and bending down and looking with a flashlight, correct?
Well, I don't know that he used a magnifying device, and he's looking for red on red.
Flashlight. His testimony was, are you aware that his testimony was he used a flashlight?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he used a magnifier as well. But you're looking for red stains on red carpet, which is kind of almost going to require a stereo microscope, prior to any luminol.
And you're aware that he specifically was looking if this represents the chair that Ms. Clarkson was found in, that he was specifically looking for blood in the area in front of where she was. You're aware of that based on his reports?
Yeah, that was sweet.
You're aware that
That was
he
really cool.
came
That was all Phil, man.
several areas in front of her on the carpet,
They'll
correct?
get one of those stickers
Yes,
in there.
I
Those
recall
are his
And,
stickers too.
This may
man.
remind you, he marked them with white X's and stuff.
I believe I did read
Just
that.
an awesome dude.
All of that KM came up negative. You're aware of that?
That's my understanding.
Then the next day, he came back in and he luminoled the entire area, including the wall and the stairway, etc. Correct?
Yes.
When I say correct, I don't mean you were there. I mean you're aware that he did that.
Always
I've
represents.
read that
Tom
testimony
Cooley's
and
boy.
report.
All right. Now,
Good one.
understanding that your testimony is you would like to have seen the carpet collected, let's talk about one other thing with regard to the luminol. You're aware that Ms. Clarkson was situated in the chair with her legs extended when she was found, correct?
That was her final position, yes.
Right. And you also indicated in your report that there's no evidence that she was in any other position when she was at the time of discharge, correct?
That meant somewhere away from the chair is what that meant. So we're clear on that.
Well, you actually wrote, Mr. James, that there's no indication that she was in any other position.
Yes, well, yeah, I think we already talked about it, but an issue had come up early in the case that she might have been shot on the stairwell or something like that. What we mean, and I'm telling you now, if it wasn't clear in the report, that we were talking about her being in the chair, period.
All right. You're aware that there was analysis done of her slip dress, of the chair, of the purse, of the surrounding carpet area, as well as of her nylons, her knees, her shins, her shoes. All of that was analyzed.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
All right. You're aware that there was no blood spatter found beneath, basically, just this side, if you will, of the hem of the skirt. The blood spatter didn't even go to the end of the hem, nor did it get on her knees or her thighs, her shins. There was no blood spatter found on her shoes as well. You're aware
Yes,
of
and
all
that's
that?
based on her final position, yes.
Right. Taking all of that into consideration and making a determination, well, is it important to take all of that into consideration in trying to formulate in your mind as a forensic scientist the pattern, the particularized pattern of what happened in 1700 Grandview Drive at about 5 a.m. on February 3rd, 2003? In other words, you have to look at that pattern that exists there on that day, correct?
Well, yes, that's what you have to look at, if that's her final, if that was her original position. That was an issue that is what this luminol issue is revolving about.
All right. And if, in fact, her legs were extended, and that was her final position.
I mean her initial position.
I'm sorry, my mistake. If her legs were extended and that was her initial position, that would render the whole discussion about luminol irrelevant, correct?
Yes,
Why is that?
because you have no blood. If that were the position she was in with her legs extended at the time she received the gunshot wound, then you would know by where the spatter was, location, again, that it didn't extend any further out. Okay, so then we would know that you would not expect any blood to be, below that area, because the legs would act as a intercepting, target.
If, in fact, the end of her hem represented the outermost boundary of where blood spatter was found, that would be maybe, as she lay in the chair, she's a relatively tall woman, 2.5 feet from the source of blood being her mouth, correct?
Yes.
If, in fact, that was the evidence that was found at the crime scene, could you situate that jacket, the white jacket, in a position in that room at the time the gunshot was fired?
Yes, if that in fact was the position she was in, and I have some issues about that, but I'll leave it to a pathologist, okay, then my answer would be yes.
Where would you place that jacket?
Would it be close to the end of the spatter on her clothing?
You've seen the photographs, Mr. James. Can you place me in about where the end of the spatter would be on her clothing, consistent with what you saw in the photographs?
Well, I mean, if I can just extend my legs out, I can't really do it
That's
that
okay.
well, but coming down to about here, then you have spatter on another target that would have to be very close to that without allowing any spatter to go on her legs.
Can you hold your hand out at about that location, the outer boundary that you're talking about?
Well, we're talking about, approximately knee level.
Okay, so if I were to place myself in that area, I would be about this close.
Yes, you would.
May the record reflect I'm maybe a foot and a half, 2 feet from the witness's face.
Correct.
Yeah, just a moment.
Yes.
I do wish he would have had more time. He was insanely entertaining and insane. Like, just in general, just a wild person up there. Feel moving in slow motion.
If you'll indulge me for
Feel
just a
all
second.
right. Let's feel all right. Sound got weird. What's happening?
Good. Thank you, Mr. James. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Redirect.
I just have one question. Mr. James, along with Mr. Jackson, just went up there and stood with you, and you indicated there was spatter on the slip. Was there any void area on the slip showing that an arm intercepted spatter?
There was not.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
And of course, if in fact the cone that we've heard so much about goes kind of out omnidirectionally, was it Bevel who did the cone?
Yeah, it was Tom Bevel and Ross Gardner's book that had the theoretical cone,
Okay.
the diagram, yes.
And there would be, assumably, there would be or there could be blood coming from beneath the arm as well as on top of the arm, correct?
Perhaps, yes. I mean, again, it's a path of least resistance.
Right, and of
Depending
course-
upon, and the intraoral wound, of course, is, I guess in our business, not a typical wound that we talk about conical dispersion of blood droplets.
If there was blood emanating from the source, from Ms. Clarkson's mouth beneath the arm, an extended arm, you would see no void pattern, would you?
I don't know how you can draw that conclusion based on what we see, but certainly if the arm wasn't in the way, then certainly it's not going to create a void. But, there is no void, period.
Thank you.
None needed.
Subject to recall, thank you for being here. You may step down.
We made it to the very boring Stuart James.
You want to go into your last witness?
That's satisfactory, Your Honor. With the court's permission,
Certainly.
we'll call our hopefully last witness,
Okay.
Detective Tomlin.
All right. Now, the people are going back to their case at this point, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, like they're flip-flopping between calling witnesses. I've never seen.
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, they're going back to the tooth thing, I think, actually, as well. Fucking Detective Tomlin's back. Jesus Christ. It's endless. So how long is the next one? 27 minutes with Detective Tomlin. Goodness, Lord Almighty. Everybody welcome in here. I mean, thanks for hanging for this long today. I appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody didn't see the new video, I did put out a clip from the Ellen Greenberg Live from last Thursday. Go check that out. I'm about to send you right now into a live stream, though, that is happening from Salty Sleuth Investigates. They're looking at, what are they looking at? I just don't have it up here. They're looking at the deposition of Mickey Steins, which I believe is the sheriff that shot that judge. So, yeah, but everybody came through today. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. And, yeah, next time you should see me will be probably at Murder Church on Tuesday night. I'll see what I can dig up, see if we can get something interesting or see what's happening. I know that I believe the Stephen Stearns trial got moved, if I'm not mistaken, because it was supposed to be coming up within the next week or so. I have to see what's going on. I have to put my ears on and get back in here. But yeah, everyone this morning, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday. And yeah, I'll see you Tuesday. And yeah, let Salty Sleuth Investigates knows that I sent you. Boom.
Pittsburgh.